These gorgeous 1926 gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 500 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling the secret U.S. gold coin discovery a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When you call, you are guaranteed a 1926 $10 gold Indian coin from the exclusive Anniversary Gold Collection, struck 150 years after America declared its independence. These 1926 dated gold coins are still in uncirculated condition. Call 1-888-201-7071 to secure your exclusive 1926 Special Anniversary Gold Collection $10 Indian coin. Plus, you'll receive a free bonus over a $125 value and free shipping with every order. Call 1-888-201-7071 now to secure your 1926 $10 gold Indian coins before they sell out. Call 1-888-201-7071. Don't wait. Call now.
Fred, I think these are mine, too, because the cushions are softer and your headphones are newer. We had to do a big headphone switch, so you saw it happening in real time. It was very
exciting.
very tricky here at the beginning of the show. Well, what happens is we got the same damn headphones because
we all do, but mine say Sue.
Right, but Fred had, he was wearing, these little stringy things, and I had enough of it, so I finally got him a pair of Sony headphones. But we've traded back and forth the last couple of weeks because we don't have either of our headphones marked off. But I guess I feel like if I have yours accidentally, yours are the newer pair, so I'm in good shape when that happens, right?
I think my old pair were handed to me as I got on a plane for an overseas trip, so you know how cheap those are.
Well, I have...
Wait a minute. You are using those, the kind you get free on an international flight? Fred, those are terrible.
Well, that was before I got these nice ones from Mark.
All right.
Well, he was using it wasn't the AirPods, but it was like they were wired.
Yeah, they were.
But there was only one. Look, I will say this, and you guys know this. I have a pet peeve when it comes to this stuff because this is our profession, and I think that people should have a good set of headphones. But anyway, good afternoon. What a beautiful day in St. Louis as we are in day 4 of our temporary studio over here at Park Pacific. We're on the KMOX side of the building. They are redoing our studio. And by the way, I went in there today, and it looks really, really cool. The engineers are doing great work. They're working hard. They think that we're going to be back in the studio by Monday. They're saying that when Annie's show begins at noon, that's kind of the goal right now, and I am off on Monday because I'm having a little medical procedure. I'm trying to figure out how much to tell people about that because I'm gonna come up with a story. Well, I'm not transitioning. I want to make that clear right now. That's not something. No hormones or puberty blockers involved. No, I have this. My hairstylist has complained for years about this, and I have this bump on the back of my head that unless my hair is really short, you really can't see it. You don't know it's there. But she sees it because she cuts my hair, and she's like, "That's getting bigger." I'm like, "It's not getting bigger." At one point a couple years ago, my doctor said, "I can take that off. I can remove that, right? It's not a big deal." Well, I kind of blew it off. Well, my daughter has been kind of, every once in a while she'll rub the back of my head, if you will, and she's like, "Daddy, you need to get rid of that." So that's what I'm having done on Monday, and it's awesome, and here's why. The procedure is not until 2:45. I got the whole day to be golfing or something like that, and then I go to the procedure, but I get I get a sick day. That's a sick day, right?
I guess.
Yeah, it's a sick day.
Well, you're often
medical
you're
procedure
so
day.
Much, Mark. You could need some time
Thank
off.
you. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yes.
I think that is important, Sue.
But
Can you get a second
right.
day off for that? Or just Monday?
Oh, that's a good question.
No, Fred, look, if the stitches aren't, here's the other thing, though. I'm going to just tell you, and I'm not going to try to, offend anyone who has cancer or anything like that. So I'm not going to say I had a brain tumor that was cancerous. But I may say that I had a brain tumor removed or a gunshot wound. Because if I just say a cyst, that's not too sexy.
Okay, just go gunshot wound. I tell you, I prefer that over exaggerated illness.
Okay,
yes.
Gunshot wound. I got nicked. I got nicked by a bullet because look, I'm traveling next weekend in
Just
theory
say
too.
cyst. How about this? It's just, I can't say. Then that'll drive people nuts.
Yeah, I can't tell you.
Yeah, I can't.
It's
Can't really
hantavirus
say.
related.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
No, don't do it.
Oh my God. I saw people, I went to the store today, I went to Target, and honestly, I think I saw more people masked than I usually do.
Really?
I bet there are people out there that are freaking out about this thing, which is why I'm not going to talk about it. So we're going to stop right there.
Good.
I have a lot going on. We have Ben Ferguson coming up. He's great. Phil Holloway, the host of the Megyn Kelly True Crime Show. We'll get a chat in this afternoon with Charles Lipson from the University of Chicago at 4:30. There's a couple of things related to the tornado. We are on the cusp of the one-year anniversary. It was on Friday last year, so the 16th Saturday is the anniversary. There's a couple of things that I want to, kind of guide people into, and one of them is kind of a special they're doing on KMOX tonight from 8 to 10. Sean Malone, who's one of the anchor reporters at KMOX, was one of the first on the scene. He took a picture from the top of our building that day, too, that went like uber viral, 300 retweets and, tens of thousands of views. So the KMOX special is called The May Tornado 1 Year Later. Michael Calhoun's going to anchor that tonight.
Oh, that's
And I believe
cool.
that's between 8 and 10 p.m.
Right.
And then I saw this promo for something they're doing, and I guess it was Mandy Murphy that really put this together, but Andy Banker's going to join us from Fox 2 tomorrow because Fox is doing a documentary that airs at 6:30. They're going to do coverage, as will a lot of the other TV stations throughout the day, but at 6:30 tomorrow, and I usually get home right around 6:40, 6:45, so I've got this already checkmarked in I still call it a DVR, even though it's not a DVR, but on YouTube TV, I want to see this. And here's the thing about the one on Fox, not to minimize KMOX because they're going to do great work tonight and have some great audio. I heard some audio this morning from Senator Hawley. Senator Hawley's not even one of my favorite people, but he was really good in what he had, reflected on because he was one of the first on the scene too. And he really, and I think Andy might do this tomorrow too. You think about what happened last year, as devastating as it was, in a weird way, it brought us all together, right, on one cause, and that was to recover from this tornado. So there were, and I never saw this in real time up in North City. I've been there since. But the people who went on the second day, for example, on that Saturday, they saw people coming together, barbecues, people being fed, all of those things. So the other thing about the Fox documentary is we are told that there's new video that people have not seen. And some of that is from body cameras from the cops that, they asked for. So I think that that's going to be really, really interesting. Man, I got something here. I got to be very careful because I have some stuff from Jon Stewart. That wasn't supposed to make a sound like that I really want to get into, but I'm not convinced that I have the time for that right now. So I might hold off on that. The president is in China, all right. And I don't know, Fred, I'll be honest with you, I don't even know what happened. Did anything happen overnight? Are they sleeping right now?
They had a great meeting. They're sleeping right now.
Here's what
Day
the president
2 is coming up.
All right, here's what the president said here. Yeah, I think he said this.
It really was a magnificent welcome like none other, and for so graciously hosting us on this very historic state visit. We had extremely positive and productive conversations and meetings today with the Chinese delegation earlier, and this evening is another cherished opportunity to discuss among friends some of the things that we discussed today.
So he went on Hannity last night, or is this audio that's going to be for tonight?
It's going to air tonight.
Okay, so
it's a preview we have.
So here's the preview because St. Louis involved here a little bit, Boeing being mentioned.
One thing he agreed to today is going to order 200 jets. That's a big thing, Boeing. 200 big ones. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot. Boeing wanted 150. He got 200. He said, I think it was a commitment. I mean, sort of like a statement, but I think it was a commitment.
All right, so that's not a bad thing. On the topic of Iran, some people thought that it wouldn't even come up.
China's support of Iran. How big a discussion was that today?
We discussed it. We support. They're not fighting a war with us or anything.
No.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. He said that today. That's a big statement. He said that strongly. But at the same time, he said, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that.
Yeah, and on the topic of that, the Strait, obviously, Hannity asking about that as well.
He did offer. He said, if I can be of any help at all, I would like to be of help. Because,
he did say that.
Yeah, he did say that. And look, anybody that buys that much oil has obviously got some kind of a relationship with him. But he said, I would love to be of help. If I can be of any help whatsoever, he'd like to see the Hormuz Strait open. He said, if I could be of any help whatsoever, I would like to help.
They kind of pal around, don't they? He likes she considers him a friend, so this is the evening now because they're 13 hours. So we're looking at like 4 in the morning right now, Fred, if I'm doing the math right. I'm not very good at math, but day 2 is coming up. Completely unrelated, but I want to get this audio in. I don't have time for the Jon Stewart. I'm going to get to that later, but this was something, Fred, I don't even know if you've heard this. I don't know if this is aired on Fox or anything, but I thought it was unreal, really. Rand Paul was hosting this committee on COVID yesterday, but his son, Mike Lawler's a New York congressman, a Republican, but not really a Trump Republican because he's in a district that, isn't real Trumpy. But he's been a key player with the GOP. He says he was accosted by Rand Paul's son. Listen to this.
Reprehensible. I went to grab a bite to eat after a long day, and it's one of the few places, the Tune-In, that actually serves food after 10. So I was meeting a friend and one of your colleagues, and ultimately, this gentleman, William Paul, decided to interject into the conversation and start accosting me about, if Thomas Massey loses, it's because of my people. And I asked him, well, who is my people? And he yelled out Jews. And I asked him, you think I'm Jewish? And he said, yes. I said, well, I'm Irish, Italian, Catholic. And he goes, I'm sorry to accuse you of that, which is just a remarkable statement in and of itself.
It really is when you think about it. He's not even Jewish. Now, there's a follow-up from Rand Paul's son I'm going to give you in a second, but this is unreal, and it's not really being reported.
Then went on a roughly 10-minute diatribe about Israel, about Jews, about Paul Singer, and, accusing Jews of, being responsible for so many things, playing right into the typical anti-Semitic tropes that so many people rely on. And at one point, said that he hates Jews and hates gays and doesn't care if they die. And I think that's disgusting. The conversation shortly thereafter ended. He gave me the middle finger. And then tripped on his way out the door.
Okay, so these are not just allegations. This happened, and it is disgusting. And here's the statement from Rand Paul's son, William. Last night, I had too much to drink and said some things that don't represent who I really am. I'm sorry, and today I'm seeking help for my drinking problem. You think? You might want to do that. That is unreal. Not being covered very much. I know that sometimes, kids do a lot of different things than parents, but that is shocking, thinking about all that. We're coming back with Ben Ferguson on 97.1 FM Talk.
Well, I'll tell you what, there is a jam on northbound. Well, how about this? Northbound headed for the Clark Bridge. So this is 67. So as you head on northbound 67 to the bridge, it's jammed approaching the bridge and into where it merges with 143 there in Alton. It looks like they've got road work going on, and 143/Landmarks Boulevard is closed as you travel west, and this is really causing a delay. Now, that is the worst of it. If you are northbound on 170, it's a little slow at Airport Road. We've got westbound 70 fine out of downtown, but slowing. 79 out through K before it opens up and slows again at Wentzville. And some moderate volume southbound 270 from Page down through Doherty Ferry. Also on the Illinois side, eastbound 64 jams, headed for 157 due to road work there. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Oh, my goodness. I love it when you're just wrapping up like that. And then, you know what just popped up in front of my screen?
Do
a little
tell.
update. Victor Scott hit a home run. The Cardinals tied with the A's. They're playing this afternoon. Cardinals did not win last night, and then they come home this weekend. So that's good news. I just kind of saw that pop across my screen, Sue, if you will. Woo. Ben Ferguson is coming up here in a couple of minutes. Let's talk about your retirement and providing you with a worry-free retirement. Is that even possible these days? Well, the team at the Retirement Advisory Group can certainly get you on that path moving forward. We don't have a new seminar to announce quite yet. I think we're going to have that announcement in the next couple of weeks. We do 5 a year. But look, you don't have to wait for one of the free seminars that we do. You can if you're more comfortable in the group setting. If you go in, write one-on-one to the office. They have a great process. You schedule a meeting, you sit down, they'll use the Retirement Advisory Group plan, they'll look at your situation, determine your needs, and then you'll get a custom strategy to help you meet those needs. And the secret is, and it's not really a secret, it's just a different strategy, is safely linking to the market so you don't lose your principal. Get to know the team at the Retirement Advisory Group and how they help people like you and families achieve their ideal retirement. So the official financial planners of this show, Thomas Helbig in the Retirement Advisory Group at retirementkey.com. I spoke with an old friend of mine today, and we're all set for an interview tomorrow. That is former head basketball coach Bruce Pearl, who was at Auburn, the most recent. But I knew Bruce when he was in his UWM, University of Milwaukee days, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee days, way back 20-something years ago. And he's coming to St. Louis to do an event at the Factory with the Jewish Federation of St. Louis. So Coach Pearl's going to join us in the 5 o'clock hour tomorrow right here on 97.1 FM Talk. I mentioned Andy Banker will be here as well, kind of promoting the Fox documentary on the tornado. And in the next hour, we're going to talk with our own Sean Malone here from 97.1 FM Talk, who is, I'm sorry, this will be at 5:30, I think. I think I messed that up before, but 5:30, Sean will be here. KMOX is doing a special documentary tonight. We have Ben Ferguson back with us, nationally syndicated radio host. He is the host of the Ben Ferguson podcast and the co-host of The Verdict with Ted Cruz, one of the top-ranked political podcasts in the country. Welcome back, Ben. How are you this afternoon? Good to have you.
Hey, man, thanks for having me back. Always a pleasure.
Just wrapped up the Open, and I played a little bit of the audio from President Trump. Obviously, with the time difference, a little tougher to keep track on everything that's happening. But what would you make of the visit with Xi so far with the president in China?
Look, I think first off, this the way that they welcomed him into the country and gave him a red carpet welcoming was pretty clear. They have a lot of respect for Donald Trump. They don't want to screw around with him. They want to get a deal done, I think, to make it where they kind of know what the environment's going to look like. Everything for China is trade and power. We know that. We also know that China is doing everything they can to spy on us in this country. We saw that happen in California this week. We've seen it happen on college campuses. I mean, the amount of spying that's taking place in this country from China is truly incredible. And so the president's got a lot of tough conversations. I also think there's going to be a lot to talk about with Iran, with Russia, and with Cuba. Look, China is a big fan of Cuba and a big fan of Cuba and Venezuela and anything that they can get their hands on with power in this part of the world. And so I think that's part of what the president's agenda is as well, is to make it very clear, like, hey, you guys don't have free reign in the Western Hemisphere anymore, and we're watching you like a hawk.
You know, and I hope those conversations take place. I mean, look, there were some procrastinators, prognosticators, I do this for a living, Ben, saying that maybe the topic of Iran wouldn't even come up. I mean, the president was kind of cagey on that himself, but you would have to think some messages would be sent, right?
I have no doubt that that's going to be talked about. I mean, it doesn't have to be public. It could be private. It could be in side rooms. When these meetings get together with countries that are really your adversary, I can assure you there is somebody in our government that is going to have a very blunt conversation with somebody in their government about these issues. Will it be done publicly? Maybe not, because that may not be advantageous to actually get something done, right? Sometimes you get things done by having very blunt conversations. But the president's not afraid to talk about these issues, and certainly not afraid to talk about it with China. He's also not afraid to use leverage, and that includes tariffs or blockades or anything else to his advantage when it comes to oil that China desperately needs right now. I mean, China at this point is in serious trouble because the lack of oil that's coming out of Iran is really hurting them and hurting their economy.
Well, you'd have to think it is, and everything we've known about the blockade overall and the effect it's having inside Iran has been devastating as well. But are we still in a war? We heard some information yesterday that maybe the next round of military action might be on the way. The president says he wants some answers here, that the Operation Epic Fury has ended. There might be a new name for another operation, but they have to somehow finish the job here, don't they, Ben?
Yeah, they do. And look, the problem that I've been talking to a lot of people in and around the White House and the State Department is this. You have, in essence, the IRGC, which is in running the country de facto in Iran. You're dealing with radical hardliners that are running that country right now, and the people that traditionally are running that country are not actually in charge. So from day to day, you have, in essence, a civil war inside the country happening, and then you have sections within that country that are agreeing to certain things, and then others are saying no. And as long as the Revolutionary Guard is de facto in charge, I don't see a deal getting done in the way that we need it to get done. So there's a very good chance we're going to have to hit more targets and quite possibly get rid of some of their leadership to then see who actually comes back to the table again. But this is the complexities of war. And when you take out the top tier and the second tier and the third tier and the fourth tier, as one military individual said to me a couple of days ago, they said, you're now at the WTF tier and the FAFO tier.
Yeah, that's right.
And when you're there, you really don't know who's actually calling the shots in the government right now in Iran.
All right, but if you go back to Sunday, I don't know what you thought about the interview on 60 Minutes with Bibi. I mean, he was pretty strong in saying, look, if you're going to get the enriched uranium, you're probably going to have to go in and get it. And we have special forces. They have training to do that. You can't finish the job without getting the uranium. And then if you have to get the uranium, you might have to go in and grab it.
Yeah, and that's a large part of this kind of conversation is it safer for us to go in and bomb targets and beat them into submission another time to try to get us closer to where they allow us to come in some sort of deal? Or do we go in and bomb targets and then go in and get the uranium ourselves, and then you've got more of a ground offensive, and that puts American lives at risk? That is a decision well above my pay grade. I trust our military men and women in uniform and the advisor of the president to make that decision. But I think clearly you've got to weigh both sides of that and see which one is better for not only getting this done, but getting it done quickly. Because let's be clear, you got the midterms coming. We cannot have this still going on when we go into the midterms.
No, in fact, I would say Ben Ferguson back with us. I'd say we got to settle it long before that. I'm in the camp that feels like the president is minimizing the impact of the gas prices on the American people. I really am, and I'm concerned about that moving forward because, most people don't listen to shows like this. They're not dialed into the minutia of what we're trying to achieve, but they may vote in November, and they're getting hammered right now at the tank, and, we keep getting told it's going to come down quickly, but we're almost at Memorial Day.
You remember that candidate several years ago, and I'm quoting, he ran under the platform of, I think it was the rent's too damn high.
Oh, yeah. I used to feature that in my show open. I do remember that guy.
Yeah. Like right now, to use that guy's line, the gas is too damn high. And look, the American people voted for energy independence. They voted for low gas prices. And right now, they want them back quickly. And the president's got to figure out a way to get these numbers down. Look, I think even having a a gasoline tax moratorium would be a very smart move for the president. That's something obviously that's been talked about at the White House. I think it's something you're probably going to end up seeing happen. But the president needs the Strait of Hormuz to be fully operational and opened up and get the oil and gas out. I think there's so many countries right now that in the Middle East that need to get their oil sold because it's really starting to hurt their economies. I'm not talking about Iran.
Right.
That I think the prices will come down pretty quick if we can get the Strait open and get this war over with. But it's got to be done before the midterms, or the midterms could obviously be a disaster.
What did you make yesterday? I thought this was really an incredible hearing, and I played some of the audio when you had the CIA whistleblower go before Rand Paul's committee. Now, some of that we already knew, some of the testimony, but still, and that's an undercovered story. Most outlets aren't probably covering that, but that's really devastating testimony, and holding, Anthony Fauci's feet to the fire would certainly be a goal that I would support. I don't know if he's ever going to be indicted or anything like that, but someone needs to be aware of all the nonsense that went on several years ago.
Yeah, I agree. But the one thing the Democrats did, and I think it was a brilliant move by them, was none of them showed up for it. And if none of them showed up for it, then you didn't have the fireworks. And if you don't have the fireworks, then you give the media a reason not to cover it. And so the media works the same with the Democratic Party. They're state-sponsored media for the Democratic Party apparatus, and no one in America knows about what this whistleblower said if they're not listening to this show or other shows like it, my podcast, because they would have no idea what actually happened in this hearing. It was shocking, the testimony from this CIA whistleblower and what is happening and how much there was a cover-up from Fauci and others in the, quote, public health. They're not supposed to play politics. They absolutely did. There should be accountability for that, no doubt. But the sad part is, unless, I did my whole show on it yesterday, my podcast that came out this morning. I thought it was that important. And I told unless you take the information that we give you on shows like yours, on shows like mine, and other conservative shows out there, and share it with the world, big tree falls in the forest and no one's around it to make a sound, right? I mean, and it's real.
Ben, why is that even? I addressed this yesterday, too. Why is this a partisan issue? But why would both sides not want to know the answers about what happened during COVID? It's utterly ridiculous to me. But the mask up crowd, they're already masking up again, I think.
Yeah, well, and it's all about power, right? If Democrats have to admit what really happened that day, and the days after COVID and Fauci being in charge, they have to admit that their party screwed up in a massive way. And so I think that's what it really comes down to, is that they want to cover up just how corrupt they were, just how much they played politics, and just how much they lied to the American people.
Ben, always great to have you on. Check out the Ben Ferguson podcast. Have a great weekend. We'll get you back on soon.
Great to talk to you. Thanks as always.
Take care.
It's not a bad commute out there right now, but if you happen to be headed into Alton, it is. Northbound 67 is jammed approaching the Clark Bridge and across it due to a road closure in Alton. So just be aware of that. Now, in the regular areas in the metro area, westbound 70, just a little volume at Jennings Station Road, a little bit slow, 270 at 70. And then 70 picks up headed for Highway K, slowing again at Wentzville. 6440, well, it's already jammed, and that's Hampton out through McCausland. We've got moderate volume in both directions at 270. And then westbound is slow again, approaching N out through the 70 split. We're fine on 55. It's just moderate volume on southbound 270 from Page to Doherty Ferry. If you're headed into Illinois, we look fine on the Poplar. 64 eastbound, though, jams approaching 157, and a slow-moving train, Route 3 at Monsanto. This report brought to you by Overhead Door Company of St. Louis. They've got a 26-point tune-up. It's a one-price deal for up to 3 garage doors and openers. Always look for the genuine original red ribbon. Overhead Door, stlewis.com. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
There is a very positive pattern going on this afternoon. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
As soon as you wrap up traffic, the Cardinals score another run. Jordan Walker just hit another home run, solo blast, so they're up 2-1 right now against the Sacramento A's. Is that what we're calling them?
Yep.
Let me talk about MasterCars Inc., and I want to give you a real-life example here. Producer Emeritus David Klein was looking for a vehicle. He never really told me what vehicle it was, but he got with Alex and Gary right away. They're a used car dealership, new car caliber, and Dave said the experience was awesome. And he even said, he admitted, he goes, at first I was nervous about not getting a test drive because you're going to probably do this unless they have something on the lot. You want a car here to St. Louis, they'll source it for you. They'll get it here. But look, what Dave said is I trust their vetting process, and you should, because Alex and Gary Rosenberger, father and son team, this is what they do. They're going to be your car experts for life. They certainly are mine. I've dealt with them now for, I think, 11 or 12 years, purchased, sold some vehicles as well. It's a great buying experience. You're going to get better deals. If you buy a new car that may be out of your price range, look at it used with some miles on it with maybe the same features and see what MasterCars Inc. can put together for you. Then they have all the stuff on the lot, which is fun too. Corvettes, Camaros, Harleys, you name it. MasterCarsInc.com. And this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly, heating, air conditioning, electrical, and plumbing. You know, I talked about this a little bit yesterday when this verdict came down from the Supreme Court in South Carolina, about the Murdaugh case. And I thought of my friend Phil Holloway, the host of the Megyn Kelly True Crime Show, because, Phil, as you know, we spent a lot of time on that particular trial. And I think you probably remember that we just wrapped up a segment when it went to the jury, and we're like, oh, this is going to take hours and hours. And by the time my commercial break ended, the verdict was already in. So we knew everything that we were talking about that day, didn't we?
Yeah, it's great to be with you again. Who would have thought we'd be talking about this case again? No, that was a fast verdict. The reason that we got caught off guard, we thought we were going to have the weekend, maybe talk later in the early the next week. It was a 45-minute verdict. A lot of people say that the evidence in that case against Murdaugh was, overwhelming. And then some people say, well, it's mostly, circumstantial. And I think both things could possibly be true at the same time. You got that audio recording that came to light, and the issue was it Murdaugh? Was it his voice on the audio recording, or was it not? Because he had claimed that he was not present, down at the outbuilding there where the murder,
where the shooting took place. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so the question is, if the jury believes that was his voice, then the evidence is overwhelming, and if they didn't, well, it's maybe not. But we're going to get to do it again, and who knows? We might get a longer deliberation this time. We may see a plea deal. Who knows?
But we probably should get another one because, look, this county clerk gets involved, or the court clerk, and says things, and the jurors instantly kind of react after this is all over.
She said, now, I don't want you to be fooled by what they say. Pay close attention to his body language, his movements. You're going to hear a lot of things. And then she went on to say how we were all going to be famous, and this is, just the trial of the century. And I was just kind of like, did she really just say that?
I have not been in front of juries and a court as much as you. I used to cover trials back in the day, but I've only seen a clerk of a court address the judge and type some things out. So there's no doubt they had to toss this, right?
No, that's right. And look, we said this on my show today at the MK True Crime Show. Look, there's no love lost for the man by me. I mean, I think he's repugnant to everything that lawyers and the legal system should stand for. But also now the clerk of court is too, because what she did is unforgivable. I mean, she only got 3 years probation. She actually pleaded guilty to crimes related to that, including perjury, by the way. And so, I feel like she ought to be in jail too with him, at least for some period of time, because we've got to send a message that you can't tamper, and that's what she's doing.
Right.
Maybe not in the traditional way, like a mob boss, maybe, but she's tampering with the jury, and we can't have a system in the United States, a criminal justice system, where we don't have any confidence in the outcome of these trials, because if historians won't look back on these high profile cases and say, the system worked, then our system has failed, and we can't have players on the inside like her with a thumb on the scale one way or the other. It just can't happen.
It's stunning. I played some audio yesterday from Martha McCallum's interviews with like 3 or 4 jurors, and they all were very consistent calling out, her behavior at the time. And it's weird to think that she was in that position for a long time, could have thought somehow that was appropriate. But I think it's also kind of weird in the case of Murdaugh. I think some of these guys, and OJ would be the prime example, I think they convinced themselves that they didn't do this, right?
Yeah, I mean, we played some of her testimony. Like, she testified in the motion for new trial. Okay, so part of the defense was, look, we need a new trial because the clerk tampered with the jury. It turns out they were right, but the prosecution came in, and their job on these appeals is to try to salvage or protect the conviction. And we played some of her testimony on my show today, and in fact, I wish I'd had the sound that you just played. That was good stuff. But her testimony, she was adamant that, she didn't do these things, and the prosecutors were kind of covering for her a little bit. And so I raised the question that, as a former prosecutor myself, Mark, if this is such a clear case, and to me it is a clear case, then I think it might have been incumbent upon these prosecutors to agree, and would consent to the relief that was requested by the defense, which is a new trial. If you had come to me as a defense lawyer and showed me proof that this was going on in my trial, as much as I would hate to have to do it a second time, I would have to say, you know what, Mark, you're right. We're going to have to give the man a new trial.
Well, because the amount of resources that are being wasted, I mean, you just pointed out one of them, but then if this has to go to a retrial and all, and then you got all these, people that have to go through this again, it's just really unfortunate that something like this happened in a case that really is pretty buttoned up. We are at 100 plus days for Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, and it seems like that's just never going to have any answers, Phil.
Yeah, well, if I had to make a scientific wild guess, I would say that her remains are somewhere within maybe a mile or two radius of that house, and hopefully one day we'll get some closure on this. But I feel like we may have seen where the sheriff's office and others in the very early stages of this made some missteps that have made it difficult, if hopefully not, but perhaps impossible for anyone to solve moving forward. There are some cases that just never get solved, but we also have cases, Mark, that we think will never be solved, like the Black Dahlia, which is in the 1940s from California. We now think that has recently been solved. It's thought to be the same person who is the Zodiac killer, and that is supposedly solved now, too. So you just never know what's going to happen decades in the future, but at least for the time being, it looks like we might be stuck with the effects of some mistakes that were made early on.
Right, even in the case of the Gilgo Beach murderer, too. I mean, it took a while to focus on that, and some of that was law enforcement related, too, with things that they did not follow up on. Anything else you want to promote for the Megyn Kelly True Crime Show podcast, Phil?
No, folks, look, I just love folks to go check us out. You can go to mktruecrime.com. We've got my show. It's called The MK True Crime Show, and we're twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But we also have 2 new shows that we've just added with Mark Garagos, Matt Murphy. They have a show that comes out on Fridays. We have Jonna Spilbore and Mark Eiglarsh. They have a show that comes out also one day a week. And so we got a full lineup, and folks should check us out wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube, MK True Crime.
And Sue and I would vouch for, we love the true crime stuff. People love the true crime stuff. Some of this stuff is just crazy when you dig into it. Phil, have a great week and a great weekend. I appreciate it.
Hey, you should come visit us. We're going to be at CrimeCon in Las Vegas at the end of the month. You should come check it out.
Wait, when are you going to be there?
You caught me off guard. The exact dates. It's the very last weekend of the month of May, whatever those dates come out to. It's at Caesar's Palace this year. It's CrimeCon. It's going to be a good time. Anybody who loves true crime should check it out. We'll be there.
I'm going to be a week ahead of you. I'm there next weekend, and I'm going to miss you by a week. But I'll be thinking about you, Phil.
All right,
All
buddy.
right, we'll
Take
see
care.
you.
We've got the usual volume on westbound 6440 out of downtown. So that's Kings Highway out through McCausland, a little slow Lindbergh through 270. And then it lines up again, Highway N out through the 70 split. Now 70 westbound looks fine. Little slow at Jennings Station Road. Moderate volume here and there as you head on out. But we've got northbound 67 just jammed. Headed for the Clark Bridge. This is all due to road work on Landmark Boulevard in Alton, and it's caused delays. We've got northbound 270 with slow pockets Manchester up through Ladue Road. Southbound is slow, and it's mainly from Page down through Doherty Ferry, but a little slow at Gravois as well. On the Illinois side, we're fine on the Poplar, jammed on Route 3 at Monsanto, and eastbound 64 is really heavy on either side of 255. This report is brought to you by Barron Mirror Glass and Door, and they have the largest, most beautiful showroom in all of St. Louis. It's full of the latest, most custom designs. It's in Chesterfield Valley. There you'll see why they say creativity unlimited, quality unsurpassed. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
We got the Derby party and Mother's Day brunch wrapped up at the MAC. We should probably make some reservations for Father's Day, which is Sunday, June 21st at the West Clubhouse. They're doing a great Father's Day brunch. I love this every year, the MAC, and this is at the downtown clubhouse. It's called Lobster Fest. You can get together with friends on either June 19th or June 20th, a Friday and Saturday night, and the Jackbutt Grill will feature Lobster Fest, which is a lot of fun, and it's just for one weekend only. I also talk about some of the philanthropic things that we do at the MAC. We pick children's charities, 3 a year. This year it's Books for Newborns, Joshua's Great Things, which teams together for kids with brain cancer. And then Missouri Kids is an organization that helps young people from injury to independence. So young athletes across the state suffer life-altering injuries. They don't have their independence, their confidence. This group, Missouri Kids, makes that happen. So we're always doing fun stuff and some really important things for the community. And you can find out more at mac-stl.org for the Missouri Athletic Club. All right, I have some time to do this, and I love this audio, and it's a little lengthy, but I want to kind of walk you into it here just because we talk about AI and all this stuff with George Rosenthal on Tuesdays, Tech Talk Tuesday. I'm in the camp that is scared to death for this stuff. It really is. There's an author. I'm going to try to get him on the air. His name is Josh Tyrangill. Tyrangeil. I'm going to take a stab at that. And he's written a book called AI for Good, How Real People Are Using Artificial Intelligence to Fix Things That Matter. So for the most part, I think, and you hear this from George, Sue, when he's on with us, even though you have all these scary aspects of AI, there are things that AI is going to do to make all of our lives easier.
For sure.
It's already happening. But I think you reacted in a strange way years ago. I remember this when 60 Minutes did this piece, and they kind of laid out how AI can kind of become something of its own and very dangerous. That scared me. It really did. And what it did is it made me feel like we weren't talking about this as a country enough, and we weren't having conversations that the important people, and I don't know who the important people are, because can you really trust members in Congress, et cetera. So Jon Stewart has this guy on his show, and they were talking about, I think you can hear John, even though he's certainly a lefty, this has nothing to do with politics. You can hear it in his voice, and you can see it in his face if you watch the segment, that this stuff scares him too. So he asked this guy some questions.
I think as human beings on this earth, the idea that we've designed something that's better than us throws into disarray our entire understanding of almost of even faith. Because what have we said about God? What do we say about the human eye? Well, the human eye couldn't have been created unless it was created by something greater than us. But we've just created something greater than us, and we're less. So does that change almost, Phil? Do they reckon with that?
So it's interesting because that's a fascinating, philosophical question for me. So the answer,
I think they do, but
want to get high and reckon with that? But do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but how is it that a lesser being creates a better being?
But I guess I look at it differently. Okay, so remember a couple weeks ago the robot that won the half marathon in China.
So this is interesting. His observation about the robot, because we talked about that, right?
Yeah, we did.
And everybody's saying, oh, the robot beat the humans. So it's like that robot probably had 2,000 programmers and manufacturers who worked on it.
Yeah.
So 2,000 people in a robot won that half marathon, in my mind.
Okay, and that's
a really
fair.
good point.
I'd never heard that perspective, but he does raise a good point. Again, this guy is really kind of focusing on some of the things that are positive about AI.
It's a great point. I keep thinking of it as every iteration of it blows my mind more than the next, and it's moving so quickly. I'll tell you a quick story before we go. I was at one of those, Illuminati get-togethers, in the mountains of Colorado, one of those things that you're like, that doesn't happen. But it happened.
All right, so when he's indicating Illuminati, he's talking there's a bunch of important people in the room, really, really big important people, but you're not really supposed to acknowledge they're all there talking about these things.
It's always like a conference, and they have it's Bill Gates and Musk, and they're all in the room. And there's a good amount of security, and the food is fantastic.
But he tells this story, all right, so we're going to get into some St. Louis stuff here. He tells this story that he wants to share about Sam Altman.
And so I thought, well, I'll get a chance. I go up to Sam Altman, and these guys are always you couldn't find a baggier, I was dressed nicer. And that never happens. You're literally really? Corduroy? Come on, dude.
Let me address that for a minute, because I find that very funny because, and I don't want to sound elitist more than I am, and I'm elitist, but I've been around a fair amount of even billionaires, okay, in my life. Herb Kohl comes to mind. Herb Kohl's the guy that started Kohl's. It was a food chain up in Wisconsin. He sold it a long time ago. He was a senator, United States senator. He owned the Milwaukee Bucks. He was worth billions. He was the worst dresser I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, you would look at him. I was out to dinner with him on many occasions, not personally one-on-one, group settings and, at events and stuff like that for the Bucks. And it looked like he would get his suits from, the Salvation Army or something like that. It was stunning.
Do you think that he was doing that on purpose? I think there are two camps. There are those who just don't know how to dress, and that's what they think is comfortable. And the other one is, I am so rich that I want to be one of the people.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of those things, but it's also, I'm so weird, I really don't understand fashion.
Weird.
Well, because Sam Altman, that's the same thing it was saying. These guys, they're eccentric. Look, Elon is on the spectrum, right? So there's differences, and there are people, I'm just telling you, with my experience around very wealthy people, some of them, the dress code is just unreal. How, yeah, exactly. But here, a little bit more with his story here, and I might have screwed up the point. Here it is.
And I said the Industrial Revolution displaced, the globalization displaced, but all those took place over decades. And America still, and the world still didn't adjust to it in the same way. AI may have that same level of displacement over 3 years.
Yeah.
And we can't in any way be prepared for that kind of disruption in that kind of time frame. And I laid it out so beautifully. Josh, I was sure that I was the one that he was going to be like, let's get some coffee and talk.
and what did he say?
He goes, we'll be good. And then he walked away. And I was like, huh, okay. That sucked.
But I can relate with Mr. Stewart from this perspective. You can hear the struggle that he's having in his brain when it comes to how quickly. I thought that the point about the Industrial Revolution and all these other things was very on point.
Yes.
Because we had decades to adjust and we still couldn't adjust, right? The economy has to adjust in a way that takes some time, and I think we know that. But with this, it's happening so fast. And we hear it every Tuesday when George is on. We see how fast it's moving, right?
Yeah, and that's just it. If it continues to go at this pace, and George is saying that it will, it's going to be completely different in 5 years.
Okay, but are the Illuminati types getting in rooms together these days and saying, hey, we've got to keep a check on some of this? Because I do think, and I want to have faith, and I don't have, and let me use yesterday as an example. I think I've gone on a rant for the past 6-7 years, maybe 10 years in particular, against experts, because we saw during COVID what the experts told us, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not real crazy sometimes about people that are working in government roles or pseudo-government roles.
That's fair.
But these are very important conversations, and there needs to be transparency, and there needs to be honesty with the American people and really with the planet about how these things are working and how they may, take over. Now, Sue, you and I and our listeners, I always give credit to our listeners because these are educated people.
Yes.
They have great taste in radio shows, but look, they care about the issues, right?
Yeah.
And they vote in all these things.
Yeah.
A lot of people out there have no idea what's going on.
It's true.
No idea what's going on.
It's true.
And I'm scared. I mean, I'm legit scared for my daughter and in the future. And I know that things work themselves out, and we get things, we figure things out in this country, and we adjust. And there are things that are related to AI that are mind-blowingly positive, right?
Yes.
But, I think that John, and I related with that so much because I feel like, man, I want to have some of those conversations, and I want people to assure me that we're looking at these different angles, and I don't know that we have that. I really don't.
Well, I would assume the Illuminati are looking at it because anything that
That's
affects
their
their
role.
bottom line,
that
they will. But the other aspect is these data centers that nobody wants.
Well, right. I mean, that's
if that happens, and as George Rosenthal kept saying, listen, these are going to happen.
Yeah, they're going to happen one way or the
So
other.
you're going to have to take it. And right now, 71% of America doesn't want to live next to one or have it in the neighborhood. I get that, but that's going to be another thing to watch. What's going to happen there? He said, if we want to be a world power, we've got to let this happen.
Gotta let it happen. Well, that's why, I think Jeff Rainford's on the panel tomorrow on the roundtable, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he is. And he's talked about, he's just been working, former chief of staff for Mayor Slay. He's been on the roundtable a lot. Has been working on these urban data centers. Because the urban data centers, they go up, right? They don't go and take up a bunch of acreage, et cetera.
Right.
So to your point, yes, that's very, very important. But we'll talk about that a little bit on the roundtable. Let me kind of promote to tomorrow in the 3 o'clock hour. Tim Fitch, former St. Louis County Police Chief, will be here, and Jeff Rainford. I had a couple of listeners reach out in the last week, and I'm just going to be honest with you. People have noticed since Jane was gone at the beginning of the year that we now only have 2 panelists. And the reason for that is because it's really, I wish I was making this up, it's impossible to find sane Democrats. Like we have some, right? We have Steve Butts, we have Jeff Smith, we have Rainford, but they're sane, and that's not as much fun for me to beat up on people, but it's uncomfortable when we bring a progressive that is a nut job into the room and to try to have a conversation. It's impossible. So at this point, we've kind of settled on, and some of this is because, Fred has to chase people down like crazy.
Yeah.
So we've got 3 people on the round table. I think it allows for a little bit of breathing on the topics, and I think we've had great conversations. And those 2 guys, by the way, tomorrow are amongst the best, so I think we're going to have a great round table. Paul Hall will make some recommendations when it comes to entertainment. Cusimano takes us into the weekend. By the way, the Cardinals are up now by a couple of runs in Sacramento. And then we're going to have Sean Malone from KMOX on at 5:30 because KMOX is doing a special 2-hour program tonight, which is entitled The May Tornado 1 Year Later. It's on from 8 to 10. Tomorrow on Fox 2, they're doing a documentary at 6:30. They're doing coverage throughout the day. But at 6:30, they're going to do a documentary for a half an hour on what happened a year ago Saturday. And Andy Banker is going to join us tomorrow with a preview of that.
I like Andy. All right, we have some volume out there On westbound 70, just to consider it pockets of moderate volume from Jennings Station Road out through Wentzville. The real jam is on northbound 67, headed for and crossing the Clark Bridge. This is all due to road work in Alton. Now, we've also got 64 westbound lined up Kings Highway in pockets on out through the 70 split. But there was an accident reported eastbound, and it's really close to Grand, so some slow-moving traffic through there. Also, 44 is slow through the depressed section, and I'm talking about eastbound. That's what turns into westbound 70, if that helps. But that's causing delays in both directions. Also on the Illinois side, road work on eastbound 64 past 255 is causing delays. We're fine on the Poplar Street Bridge. 270 southbound, that's from just Page down through Doherty Ferry, but northbound slows Doherty Ferry through Ladue Road. I'm Sue Thomas. That's traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
This is an amazing offer, really is, from Stewart's American Mortgage. He has a deal for all new customers who are purchasing a home. It's a 1% discount on an interest rate for the first year. So for the first year of your loan, you can lock in a 1% lower interest rate on a new 30-year loan, and you still get the bagel loan with no closing costs. So that's a plus, a win-win, as we say. And that's what Stewie's all about, saving people thousands and thousands of dollars. He has a lot of advantages that some of the other brokers don't have. He's the only lender to offer the bagel loan. And it's called the bagel loan because it looks like a zero. And when you refi, and it's a great time to do that because even though you think that the rate is lower than you have right now, if you need to access cash and your equity, remember, with Stu, you pay no appraisal fees, no closing costs, no title fees, no broker fees. And then again, with new clients purchasing a home, a 1% discount on your interest rate for the first year, plus the bagel loan. So that's a win-win, as I said. I'm going to give you his cell phone. Contact him directly, 314-324-4440. 314-324-4440, or Google the bagel loan. Stewart's American Mortgage, NMLS number 226715.
Give and take in China. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. After a summit with President Xi, President Trump says the Chinese leader offered to help when it comes to Iran and denied sending weapons to Iran, telling Fox's Sean Hannity.
He said that strongly. But at the same time, he said, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that. He'd like to see Hormuz Strait opened.
That interview airs at 9 Eastern tonight. A Chinese statement after the closed-door meeting called Taiwan the most important issue with the U.S., warning of possible conflict if it's not handled properly. Secretary of State Rubio says there would be global repercussions if China tried to take the self-governing island by force. A number of key U.S. business leaders attending the state banquet in Beijing earlier today, with the two presidents also discussing opening up China and economic cooperation. A man nearly executed multiple times crimes. And Oklahoma gets a green light to get out on bond.
An Oklahoma judge grants former death row prisoner Richard Glossop a $500,000 bond while awaiting retrial over a 1997 killing that brought him within hours of execution 3 separate times. The ruling could free the 63-year-old for the first time in nearly 30 years. Last year, the Supreme Court overturned his conviction amid long-standing innocence claims supported by Kim Kardashian and others, and highlighted in the 2017 documentary Killing Richard Glossop.
Fox's Carmen Roberts. Prosecutors say Glossop's former boss was killed in a murder-for-hire scheme. If he's freed on bond, he will have restrictions, including an electronic monitor. A man accused of opening fire on a Massachusetts street pleads not guilty. Tyler Brown appearing in court from a hospital bed. Prosecutors say at least 70 rounds were fired in Cambridge Monday, wounding 2 people. He's facing multiple charges. The judge also hearing he has a long criminal history and mental health issues, ordering him to remain in custody for now. America is listening to Fox News.
Paid for by government. Did you hear? A secret hoard of 1926 $10 gold Indian coins have been found. These gorgeous 1926 gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 500 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling the secret U.S. gold coin discovery a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When you call, you are guaranteed a 1926 $10 gold Indian coin from the exclusive Anniversary Gold Collection, struck 150 years after America declared its independence. These 1926 dated gold coins are still in uncirculated condition. Call 1-888-201-7071 to secure your exclusive 1926 Special Anniversary Gold Collection $10 Indian coin. Plus, you'll receive a free bonus over a $125 value and free shipping with every order. Call 1-888-201-7071 now to secure your 1926 $10 gold Indian coins before they sell out. Call 1-888-201-7071. Don't wait. Call now.
Wow, what a beautiful stretch of weather here in Missouri for spring. I'm going to say big thumbs up because sometimes we get thrust into the heat and the humidity, and that has been avoided, which is really good. And we're going to get Dave Murray on, I think, tomorrow to talk about not only the forecast, but his recollection of the tornado. And as I mentioned, Sean Malone at 5:30 from KMOX. They're doing a big special tonight. And then Andy Banker tomorrow night will give us a preview of the Fox documentary that's going to be at 6:30. I'm really excited, and I had a chance to touch base with him today. I knew former college basketball coach Bruce Pearl in another incarnation of my life, like 20-something years ago when I was in Milwaukee, and he was the coach of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee team, had a lot of success there. He went on to Tennessee and then eventually Auburn, and he got out of coaching, though, and he's really been addressing some cultural issues. He was at the Supreme Court the day that the Title IX decision came in. He's been on Jennings' show, so this is so funny. I know a lot of people, and Fred knows a lot of people, right? So if we need to contact someone, I can usually track people down.
Yes, you can.
So I sent messages to a lot of people. I sent Senator Schmidt. I said, I'm trying to get a hold of Bruce Pearl because I had an old number for him. I sent it to some other people. No, Dwayne Patterson. Dwayne Patterson is Hugh Hewitt's guy, right?
Yeah.
He goes to his guy and he can't find it, right? And then, lo and behold, I find out that Jennings has him on his show. And I'm like, how did that happen? He beat me to it. Like, I think I even mentioned it to him. But he shared the contact, and Bruce was nice enough. And this goes back, by the way, during March Madness. But we kind of let him off the hook to a certain extent because he was so busy. And I'm glad we did because he's coming to St. Louis on the 3rd of June, Coach Pearl is, for an event with the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, and it's at the factory. So that's going to be awesome. He will join us tomorrow night here on 97.1 FM Talk.
Tonight.
Hey, I had to correct a bit of a headline today. in the LA Times.
I saw this. This was funny.
Yeah, because the LA Times have a story today that says mother of transgender athlete A.B. Hernandez determined to push through protests. I corrected that for the LA Times. Quick correction. Mother of male athlete stealing awards from girls determined to keep kicking their asses because he's a boy. And this is outrageous. And let me just offer you an example of Media Bias 101, because the LA Times, and they're the worst. They really are. And I thought that they were maybe getting better. But if you just read this story about A.B. Hernandez, how many stories do you think that the LA Times have done featuring little girls who have had titles robbed away from them because they're competing against someone with a penis?
Zero?
Zero, right.
Yeah.
But in this, they want to talk about all this empathy for the boy who's stealing the titles. And it's just, it's hilarious. But listen to the way they phrase this. The policies in California allow transgender athletes to compete alongside other cisgender girls. What? That's a made-up phrase. Let's redo that one, too. The transgender boys can compete against girls. Okay, they're called girls. They're not called cisgender girls. They are women and girls. But the LA Times puts that language in there because they're so progressive and biased. And then it's hilarious because they this is a 95% issue. If you presented the evidence of A.B. Hernandez in particular to the American people, I'm pretty sure it would go up to 98%.
Oh, I agree.
Because he is smoking these girls and has done this for several years.
This is just so stupid.
It's ridiculous. And, you know, the mom says she's done nothing wrong. Well, you've done something wrong because you convinced this girl or this boy that he's a girl. I can't even keep it straight because you can't keep these things straight. And everything in this article is tilted toward mom and A.B. Hernandez. There's nothing in here that even addresses the fairness issue. It's ridiculous. But that's what they do. And that's, I guess what we should be used to.
They don't say anything about...
There is not one reference.
Nothing,
you can check the story. It's up there on my Twitter right now. There's not a reference to the fairness issue at all. It's an opinion piece. It's not news. This is why you cannot trust the legacy media. You can't. Even though there have been some progress and they've made some progress, that is a BS story. This is the same organization that, of course, years ago declared that climate change was settled science. If we know nothing else in 2026, we know that climate change is far, far from being settled science. It's a big joke. All right, let me take a little weird, awkward transition from trans athletes into Sports Illustrated from the 1970s because look at the stack of SIs that I have.
Oh, my God. Is that Fred's?
It is.
Fred.
Now, he brought this in to show me, and you have... these are original copies that you had as a kid?
No, I just picked them up.
Because you go to the estate sales and stuff like that. So you found these. But did you subscribe when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah, I
So
did.
you probably had these because I did too.
Yeah, I did too.
Of course. But he's got one here. Let's see. Because
Did I
these
see
are
Lance Armstrong?
Yeah, so
on
this
one?
is actually more recent because it's 2001, August 6, 2001. You got Lance on the cover. They're talking about Maurice Green in basketball and all this other stuff here. Let's see. Pro Football, Doug Flutie article there. You don't get many Doug Flutie articles.
It's just interesting to see that, they're praising Lance Armstrong. And it's way before anything was known.
Well, some people knew at that point. But yeah, you're right. How about this one? This is very timely. July 4th, 1977. And we just talked about him because he died. Ted Turner is on the cover of Sports Illustrated because of the America's Cup. He won the America's Cup, right?
I had forgotten that.
October 12th, 1981. The great Gretzky. Best player in the... Look at his face. Look how young Wayne Gretzky is.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
he was
the hair.
firm.
He wasn't even 21 then.
Oh, my gosh, right.
Wow.
And here's your favorite. You ready? This is April 22nd, 1974, Gary Player.
Yes!
On the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Look at him.
I know. He looks like young and in shape. And okay. Then there's Tom Watson, 1977, after he wins the Masters, golf's new master.
Okay, this is a weird fact. My camp counselor in 6th grade, yes, her uncle was Tom Watson. So he would send her these really long letters about how what so-and-so tournament was like and blah, blah, blah. He would write it all out to her.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
kind
pretty
of
cool.
weird.
That is
isn't it?
awesome.
Yeah.
He's got a couple more in here that are really interesting to me. April 4th, 1988. Will Clark and Mark McGuire. And Mark McGuire looks as thin as I do. He's a little pre the steroids era there, but they were the Bay Area Sluggers with Will Clark was a star on the Giants and Of course, Mark McGuire was on the Sacramento A's, as we call them right now. And then look at, Sue, because you follow sports enough, you know who Chris Collinsworth is, right?
Yeah.
I like Chris a lot.
I do
think he's
too.
a great commentator. But he was a football player way back in the day. And when he was a rookie in 1981 in December, they put him on the cover.
Oh,
By
let
the
me
way,
see.
I've noticed something too, Fred. From 77 to 81, the price of the magazine went up from $1 to $1.50, which is kind of interesting. But look at Chris Collinsworth on that cover. He's a baby too.
She's a baby.
Little baby face.
He's so cute.
This one, I would say, is probably worth some money, and this is when Hank Aaron hit his 715th home run, right? I mean,
Oh,
look,
that's
all
cool.
it says is 715, and that's from April 15th, 1974, and I remember that night
That's
watching on
neat.
television. And then this one, I mean, Fred, these are collector's items. This is O.J. Rushes for the record. O.J. Simpson, before he sliced two people up in Brentwood in October of 1973, when the magazine was just 50 cents, is on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Those magazines seem like they're worth a lot of money, but they're really not so much because they have labels for where they, who received them.
Right.
And the true collector wants
No label?
Yeah, no
Oh,
label.
is that
a
true?
newsstand version of the
Well,
magazine.
I guess that makes sense.
So
it
there you
does.
go. So that's why you can get them relatively cheap at estate sales.
So that's fascinating because that's a really interesting collection. Have you come across anything related to the Cardinals in the 80s?
Oh, yeah. I've
Okay.
got a lot of those, too.
Yeah. All right, Sue's News on a Thursday. Coming up.
If you are headed into Alton, we've got a serious parking lot jam on northbound 67, and that starts at 94. Now, we are really busy. There was an accident eastbound 6440 past Grand. That's created a jam behind it, and westbound is lined up approaching Kings Highway. And that goes in pockets, but it's all the way out through 70. 70 westbound, moderate volume in pockets. It starts at Jennings Station Road and goes on out. We've got southbound 270 approaching Olive, and some volume really that goes to just south of 44, but northbound lines up as well. And that's from Doherty Ferry up through Ladue Road. 44 is jammed in both directions in front of the Arch grounds. And we look okay on the Poplar. 70 eastbound slows at 64 and some volume. Eastbound 64 headed for 157. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Well, if you have a flooring project that is on the horizon, I want you to turn to the team at Michael's Flooring Outlet here in St. Louis. They have 3 awesome locations that are open right now. They're open tomorrow. They'll be open on Saturday, not on Sunday. Mike gives the team off on Sunday, which is awesome. I think that they should have that day off. There's still ample time, though, for you throughout the rest of the week to get, some really great advice on flooring, and maybe just go to the website to get started. If you go to igotfloor.com, you'll see how great the Michael's offerings are when it comes to the amount of products that they have. You can order, some samples online. But again, if you go into one of the stores, and I remember doing this, just a few years ago, we did a flooring project. I guess it goes back about a year and a half now. But when I walked into the St. Peter's location, it was a little overwhelming. There's so many different products, so many different things that might fit your lifestyle. You need experts that have been in this industry for a long time, and that's what you have. You go to a big box store, you're not going to get the best advice. And you're going to get great prices at Michael's, too. They'll take great care of you before, during, and after the service. igotfloor.com, 3 great locations, closed on Sundays. Michael's Flooring Outlet. Wait, what happened? I thought I was doing the show with Ricky Fowler. You had your pea hat on, and then you took it off. And that sounds dirty when I say it that way, but it's like the Puma hat, right, Sue?
Yeah, I just got it, and I really kind of like it, but it's a flat bill, and I don't want to smash my hair again.
But can I just say this?
Yes.
You pulled it off when you put it
think
on.
so?
I do. I would
All right,
tell you,
'cause
I'd be
that's-
honest with
yeah,
you.
you would. So
I would.
I appreciate
So I
that
like
about you.
Can't you bend flat bills a little bit?
Yeah, you can, but it just seems uncool, Fred. I don't want to be uncool.
Right.
You
Now,
understand.
like if you're really hip, you not only do you have a flat bill, but you leave the label on it too. So it looks like
Oh.
I don't know. That's what some people do. That's
What?
a cultural thing. I can't really explain it, but let's do this. I can't explain a lot of things.
These allegations are deeply concerning.
Does the president have any comment?
We're not going to comment.
It's not clear messaging.
No.
And now, Sue's News. Brought to you by Sue.
You guys, I just opened a package. Somebody had sent me a package. And I thought, well, that's interesting.
To hear at work?
Yeah. It was in this box, and I thought, surely someone did not send me a mouse.
Is that what the box says? It's like a mouse for a computer?
So I opened it up, and Ethan and I did, and here's the note I got. I saw this at a garage sale and thought, Sue needs this. So either I listened to the show too much or I need more friends. Anyway, enjoy. Thanks, Jerry Hicks, High Ridge, Illinois. Or sorry, just High Ridge, Missouri.
My neck of the woods.
A bell.
Another bell.
Oh, another bell.
With little dog paws
Oh,
on
my
it.
goodness. What's the quality of the bell? Let's hear it.
It's pretty good.
Okay. How does it compare to the other one? See, the thing is
Wow,
that
tone,
that
people.
that silver one still kind of is
Yeah.
the sound that we
Well,
like.
you're
but
right.
we appreciate Jerry's effort
Thank
here.
you, Jerry.
You know, we can always open up a bell, museum. We're getting so many of
We are
these.
getting a lot.
Yeah, but I like it. Okay. I wanted to start off with telling you, of course, that it's Happy National Dance Like a Chicken Day. Why, people? And how does that happen?
How does a national day for that happen?
No, and how
That should be regional.
Yes,
thank
well,
you,
because
Fred.
I always think of, I don't know why, but I think of, the
No,
chicken
no,
dance.
no,
Like, yeah,
no,
right.
no,
but,
the duck dance.
Right, but where did that, there was something connected to Missouri that I always kind of thought about with that.
Is the chicken dance the same as the duck?
I'm going to say that it is, but I don't know. That's all I remember is that.
All right, it's also National Buttermilk Biscuit Day, which sounds really good to me.
Yeah.
And National Decency Day. So this is essentially Fred's day. Now, this is...
Except for the chicken
Well,
dance.
except for that.
I
Celebrates
think that was a slight at the host, personally.
No, I don't know what you
understand.
mean. I
accept
didn't
that.
include me either. Celebrating the basic standard of civility that every American deserves. So they thought that it got a little out of hand and we should all be better to each other, which is true, I
I
think.
tend to lean in the other direction just slightly. Just a little.
What?
Especially in certain circumstances. Oh, I had a good one today, but I'm not allowed to talk about it with you guys. So I might have to kick you out of the studio and then talk about it.
What?
Because you don't like it when I talk about my road.
Oh.
So I'm going to kick you out of the studio.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, okay.
No, I don't mind it now because we're getting close to a culmination of it.
It is less than 15 hours away that it's supposed
not-
to open.
I will believe it when
I know.
see it.
That's what I say.
Yes.
But anyway, I'll talk a little bit when you are out of the studio.
Okay.
So then I don't get judged because I
That's
get
fair.
judged harshly
Yeah, you do.
when I go off
You
on this
do.
tangent. But it's the last one I'm going to have, so I think that I got to go out,
In a
guns
blaze of
a-blazing.
glory.
Yes, thank you.
53 years ago today, in 1973, NASA launched Skylab. It was America's first space station, and it was considered a huge success at the time. But then Skylab lost its orbit 6 years later, and we were all in a state of Skylab is falling. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Skylab is
One of my
falling.
radio idols, a guy named Steve Dahl from WLUP in Chicago, he would do parody songs, right? And he did one to Shattered, and it was the Stone Shattered. It was Skylab, should do be. And I always flash back to that because it was so funny. When was that? 78 or
that's
79, right?
awesome. Yeah, 79. It
Yeah.
crashed back to Earth in 79. And then 28 years ago, okay, think about that. 28 years ago, Seinfeld aired its final episode.
Wow, that was That was before Ethan was even born.
I know.
Yes.
Wow. And I am cranking through some Seinfeld season 3 right now. I'm like on episode 15 of season 3, and I'm loving it.
Well, it's because, it lasts. It's, what do you call it? It holds up.
It does hold up.
Most people hated the final episode. I was one who did.
I don't remember the final episode.
It was so stupid. They ended up in jail. Remember that, Fred?
I do not remember that at all.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible.
I'll get to it here in a couple of months. I'll check in at the end of the summer when I finish up all. How many seasons were there?
9.
Okay, well, for whatever reason, I started like middle of season 3, just because that's where, someone else was watching on Netflix, other account holder.
Oh, yeah.
And I just said, okay, I'm going to start this. So I'm getting through season 3.
Well,
We may go back to the first 2.
The cast, it was so bad, that final episode, that the cast reunited on Curb Your Enthusiasm to give the show a true, proper send-off. Did you see that?
Yes, I did see that,
Okay.
yeah.
And then also 28 years ago, it was 1998 when Frank Sinatra passed away. He was 82. It was on this day, Seinfeld and Frank Sinatra.
I was in Target today, Sue,
Minding
and
your
I
own
was getting
business.
some stuff for the household. But they sell, and I know this because my daughter bought this for my birthday present. They sell vinyl in there, right?
Yeah.
And they have a lot of new vinyl in there. And I just took a peek, and they had one, and I mean, I might buy this one. It was a double record Sinatra Classics. I'm like, I don't have any Frank
buy
Sinatra
that.
on vinyl, so that one, I didn't look at the price, but it's on my list, I think.
Okay. There's a new release of Frank stuff that is so excellent, and it's really good on vinyl. I will get you that.
Yeah, please let me know. I don't know if maybe this is the same thing, but I was impressed that it wasn't just new artists, that there were some retro things up there.
Is he young?
On the cover, I can't, just a cover. I don't remember what it was.
He's young and the good ones. Now, another person has been sentenced for contributing to Matthew Perry's death. This one got 2 years. 56-year-old Eric Fleming, who was a licensed drug addiction counselor. And Fleming apparently was the one who delivered Perry the doses of ketamine that killed him. Sounds like law enforcement flipped him and then used him to get info.
So he was the middleman.
Yeah. And he said, it's truly a nightmare I cannot wake up to. He became an informant on the other people.
But he still got 2 years. That's
He
serious.
said he is haunted by the mistakes he made.
Well, he should be.
And
It's disgusting.
he's been out on bond, but now has to turn himself in.
The problem is, and I'm not saying empathy for this guy because he did what he did and he's going to have to suffer the consequences. But look, there's been reporting on this. The LA Times actually did some really good reporting. And when you have he's an A-list celebrity, right? And he's asking you to do things. And people want to please the celebrities and the people that they work for. And that starts a bad, pattern. And that's what happened with Matthew Perry, and he never got out of it.
By the way, there's a story out that talks about this. So, Mark, I wanted to ask you. Okay, experts say that recesses have been shrinking over the years, and it's not good for kids. Do they not have recess? What do they do?
Alexa has recess, but I don't think that she's going to have it at middle school. They have PE, okay?
Yeah.
But she has that and recess.
Well, I think it's mainly K through 5 that they do that. But apparently, they say kids should be getting a minimum of 20 minutes of recess every day and multiple breaks. Physical activity is vital, and now that 1 in 5 American kids is dealing with obesity. But they say it helps them to learn how to navigate relationships, right? You're out on the playground, you're going to play with so-and-so. What about Freddie over there? Is he going to play Foursquare? What were you going to say, Fred?
No, I'm wondering, what was your favorite recess sport? What were you good at?
We played kickball.
I loved kickball.
Yeah, I liked kickball quite a bit. But we also had this thing, and I've talked about this before, and no one's ever heard of it. So it's like I feel like I lived on a different planet. It was called pinners.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, right.
Never heard of it.
So what happened is you had a big metal tube that was stuck to the wall, sort of like where you would have a square for a batter's box.
Okay.
And you were the person who would take the ball, I think it was a tennis ball, and you would try to hit it on the sweet spot of that metal hollow post that was on the wall, and then the ball would pop back, and based on how far the ball would go, and you'd only be playing with 3 people, it was a single, a double. I don't remember all the rules, but this was in the suburbs of Chicago. But every time I talk about it, I always think that someone's going to chime in and say, I remember that game.
Nothing.
And if you Google it, let me see if I Google it, I think they do have something on there about this being a game that people play. But
what was yours, Fred? Foursquare? I like Foursquare and kickball.
I don't know. What is Foursquare?
Well, you have the 4 squares and you hit the ball back and forth. I'd have to look that up again.
I play Foursquare currently with Alexa, but
Thank
the problem is it's complicated because there's a bunch of different audibles you can call, and
Yeah.
all I want to do is just bounce the damn ball,
Oh,
so I get into trouble.
Well.
Pinners is a Chicago neighborhood game played on the front stoop, on the walls with angled bricks or stones, which can be used to pop the ball up in the air. So they say the batter throws a rubber ball or tennis ball at the edge of the step or the angled brick wall. We did it with that, the hollow metal post, and you try to catch it as the ball bounces back. So it was real. I'm not making it up.
Well,
but no one that I've ever talked to has ever really heard about it.
Maybe
but we had a lot of
someone
fun.
will.
We had a lot of fun doing that back in the day.
I think I like dodgeball. That was a lot of fun.
Dodgeball was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Colin Jost from SNL was on New Heights podcast when Travis Kelce asked him a question that he knows a lot about, of course, being the less famous person in the relationship. And I kind of liked his response. We have that.
Well, because Colin is married to Scarlett Johansson,
Yes.
right? So here's what they said.
How nice is it to be the less famous person in your relationship?
Huge relief. Really huge relief. I think I'm probably almost approached more because she's less approachable. Because I'm on TV, I have like a lesser. People are just like, I'm in their living room, so they're just like, "Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?" She's actually almost so famous they don't believe it a lot of times. And the person's looking at her passport, and he'll be like, "Has anyone ever told you look like Scarlett Johansson?" Like genuinely asking and not real, even though he's looking at her passport, because he's like, it would be weirder if it was her.
That's funny.
Isn't
That's
that
good
funny?
audio. I've never been, and he sounds fine there, but I've never been a fan
Well,
of
of
his
course
just because.
not, 'cause
Well, it's
he's
just because it's so the SNL
so
the Weekend
biased.
Update is so biased. So I don't think he and Michael Che have been funny for the most part at all.
Well, agreed.
And he outkicked his coverage on the wife front. Let me just say that.
You think? Jay Leno is giving away a 2026 Corvette C8 Stingray to the winner of Wheel of Fortune's Big Money Week, which ends tomorrow. This thing's worth over $70K. And if you've ever seen Jay Leno's garage, just the show on YouTube, it's amazing. He's got to have over 350 vehicles, including cars and motorcycles.
It's crazy. It really is.
Amazing. And finally, in Sue's News, we have today's random fact. All right, here we go. One single Google search takes more computing power than the entire moon landing mission in 1969.
Whoa.
If that doesn't make your brain hurt, I don't know what will. That's a good one. Thank you, Sue. Wrapping it up for a Thursday.
I'm Dan Loney with Your Money Now. Anthropic and the Gates Foundation have pledged $200 million to back artificial intelligence-related public goods and areas like health and education. Half of the commitment by Anthropic will come from its technical staff and usage credits. The Gates Foundation will provide grant funding. This partnership will span at least 4 years. California Attorney General Rob Bonta has sent a letter to FIFA over its ticketing practices for the World Cup. Bonta cited reporting by The Athletic, which suggests that FIFA misrepresented where the location of tickets for fans actually would be back in the fall and winter before they knew where the tickets were actually located. A strong showing by Wall Street with the Dow Industrials back above 50,000 and more record closes for the NASDAQ and S&P 500. The Dow gained 370 points today, ending the session at 50,063. The NASDAQ added 233 points, and the S&P 500 picked up 57. That's Your Money Now.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along. Which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.
And at 4:33, this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating, Air Conditioning, Electrical, and Plumbing. We are going to welcome in one of our favorite guests, Charles Lipson, in just a moment to talk about China and Iran. But I thought this was interesting. You know, now we're getting to the early morning hours in China for day 2 of the summit. Jackie Heinrich reporting for Fox on kind of the different reads from each camp, China and the U.S.
Readout indicates that President Trump did not budge on the Taiwan issue, and China really had some thoughts about that. We knew that Xi was going to probably dangle that issue to try to extract something from the U.S. in exchange for cooperation on Iran. The Chinese readout of the meeting warns that Taiwan is the most important issue for U.S.-China relations, and, quote, if it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts, putting the entire relationship in great jeopardy. Taiwan independence and cross-strait peace are as irreconcilable as fire and water. The U.S. side must exercise extra caution in handling the Taiwan question. The readout also claims that Xi referenced the Thucydides trap in the bilateral meeting. That refers to how tensions between a rising power and a ruling power have often resulted in war. Now, those are some very sharp words compared with the White House readout, which called the meeting good.
Yeah, I would say that's a real difference in narratives there. We have Charles Lipson, professor emeritus at the University of Chicago, who writes at charleslipson.com. What do you make of everything so far? How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing very well. It is really striking how differently they've read this out, and also how different it is from the way that the plane came in with all those business executives. I expected a lot of economic news to come out and sort of dominate rather than the security issue of Taiwan, which I knew would come up, but I've been a bit surprised. It sounds like you are too.
Yeah. On the Taiwan issue, because look, they've made their, wishes pretty clear, haven't they, on mainland China? And how do we handle that? How does the U.S. deal with that issue?
The U.S. For years and years and years has pursued what they call strategic ambiguity. They've acknowledged that there is one China, that Taiwan is not a separate country. But they have not gone so far as to say that they would. They've been reluctant to back it fully for fear that if they did so, Taiwan would take more aggressive action toward Beijing. But I don't think that that's the problem now. I think the problem is the reverse, that Xi has gone to a third term, which is unprecedented in his case, because he clearly wants to take Taiwan. Let me say something about how this relates to Iran. Yes. Everybody has been talking about how it relates to oil and all of that. But I think there's a different point. Iran has shown that a small nation that is really well equipped with drones and high technology can really fight a war that will hold off a greater power. And the hardest thing in the world is to do an amphibious invasion. Taiwan is 100 miles away from the coast of China. So this is much more difficult than D-Day in World War II. And I'm really struck by how nasty the Chinese have been about this. They clearly want to do what they did with Hong Kong, which is incorporated against their will.
But then when it comes to, because we've heard this for a while, the narrative about Taiwan and China, so it's nothing new. But to your point, they're not taking their focus off of those goals. And then my question would be, well, what do we do, if anything, militarily in that situation? Because we've certainly warned China about this issue. But man, that sounds, I don't know what they're saying in those closed door rooms, but that is a complicated issue.
Well, we have continued to sell military equipment to Taiwan, and I assume that is something that she really hates. But let me say something about the Thucydides trap. because I think the Thucydides trap was something only us old professors talked about for a long time. It refers to ancient Greece and the fact that Athens was a rising power and Sparta was had been the most powerful state, but was believed to be in decline. And so the rising power made war to sort of assert itself in first place. The thing is, China, under Xi, is depicting itself as the rising power and the U.S. as the dominant but declining power. I think that's backwards. I think that the United States is the most dominant power, but I think China is in decline, not rising.
Let me take you to Iran. You've written extensively about this. We've talked about this over the past couple of months. And, you know, we're still, obviously, the war is still going on. There's no missiles and bombs, at least to our knowledge. There was a little bit of a breakage maybe in the strait from the Iranians. But, you know, now we're in a position where we got to figure out how to finish the job here. And your question, I know one of the questions you ask is, will he start the bombing again? I mean, certainly there's been threats about that even this week if they can't negotiate on some of these issues that he's going to bring the thunder again.
Exactly. I think one of the key issues in war is always how the fighting, which in this case also includes economic sanctions, how that changes the calculations of both parties as it proceeds. Because once one party knows it's going to win or the other knows it's going to lose, that can lead to a negotiated settlement. What's striking to me about this is that both sides think that that they win by waiting, that the longer it lasts, the better for us militarily, at least. Obviously, for Trump and for the Republicans, the longer it lasts, the more it impinges on the autumn election. But the fact is, it's hard to see how the regime can pay its soldiers and pay the people who suppress and kill the majority of the population who want the regime gone. It's hard to see how they can continue if they can't pay them. On the other hand, what we've learned about this regime is how resilient it is and how difficult it is to take them down. This is not a one-man regime. This is not Venezuela.
Doesn't that kind of raise questions about our readiness and how much thought was put into this particular strategy?
I think they put a lot of thought into it. I think they may have miscalculated how resilient the regime was. It's an opaque regime, and it's hard to know how resilient it is. Same question, by the way, right now is arising with regard to Cuba, which has now run out of oil. It's in permanent blackouts, and I can very well see a regime change in Cuba coming up.
Yep, I think you're right about that. I talked about that a little bit earlier with Ben Ferguson on the show.
What did he say?
Well, yeah, he kind of focused on Cuba as well and says, yes, those are part of the conversations. You know, there is a narrative out there, and I don't know if you saw the 60 Minutes piece with Bibi. I do think it was interesting from the standpoint that he said that, you know, we could get the enriched uranium, but we're probably going to have to go in and get it with special forces, either Israeli or American, so that gets very tricky. But there's the narrative out there, maybe amongst the left, Charles, most prominently, that Trump's getting pushed around in all this by Bibi. And what would you say about that?
Well, I would say that they had coincident interests. It seems like the one case where Bibi may have played a role was in the actual launching of the first attack when apparently it was the Mossad that discovered that all the leaders of the regime were in one room at one time. Mm-hmm. But remember, by that point, the United States had already put a huge amount of military equipment into that theater for conflict. You just don't do that unless you're about to engage in, as I say, kinetic action.
I just think very strongly that something needs to happen to push this to a conclusion relativally quickly. It's very unlikely that will happen while Trump is in China.
And I think what you'll see, it's also the case that the UAE, the Gulf states, and so forth really want to see this regime gone. They just don't think that if the regime survives, that it will change its stripes.
Yeah, and they're right about that. I mean, I don't know why you'd have any indication. So if in the end that does happen and you somehow get the enriched uranium, that's a victory. Okay. And maybe was that worth the pain at the pump? Maybe it was, but my fear is this. I had this fear from the beginning, Charles. You probably know this. The timetable.
Yep.
The timetable keeps getting extended.
Absolutely.
Keeps getting extended. So I'd like to see a little bit more definitive action taken here in the next week or so. Always great to have you on. I hope all is well. You can find Charles at charleslipson.com. Have a great week.
You too, Mark.
All right. Take care.
We've had crews dealing with this accident westbound 6440 past Forest Park Avenue, and they've got the right lane blocked, so there is a delay through there. It's actually eastbound. I'm not sure why they're calling it westbound, but if you're in that area, look for a slow go behind it. Now, there's also an accident downtown eastbound 44 before Madison. They've had the two left lanes blocked there, and traffic is jammed back onto 55 and then back onto 44 at Jefferson. So if you are headed for the Poplar, that's part of the problem. Now we've got westbound 40 lining up Kings Highway out through McCausland, and then it's pockets on out. Stall reported southbound 270 at Page, and that's causing a delay. We've got really some slow-moving traffic on southbound 270. South of Page, down through Doherty Ferry, and northbound, there was an accident approaching Manchester. There's a jam there as well. Now, the other serious delay is on northbound 67. We've got road work in Alton, and it's caused a jam all the way back through 94. Westbound 370 slows at 141. It's just one of those days. And on the Illinois side, 64 eastbound slows headed for 157, and that is due to road work. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
We're going to get an update on the PGA Championship and the leaderboard in about an hour. I'm just going to tell you, I looked at the leaderboard just now, and I follow golf, and I love professional golf, and I know a lot of you do too. In the top 10 right now, there's a lot of people that are tied for like 8th position, but if you look at the names up there, there's 5 names that I don't even know who the hell they are,
Oh, boy.
including the guy. Well, that makes it interesting. The guy at the top of the leaderboard is someone I've never heard of. So Dan will have a report. He's down there, or I want to say down there. He's over in the Philadelphia area. That's where it is in Pennsylvania. So that's coming up here in an hour, right before audio cut of the day. We even spent some time, I can't remember if it was this week or last week, with folks from the Show Me Institute. David Stokes is always a great guest. And the Show Me Institute is a resource that we use here on the station. They're great sponsors of ours, but philosophically, they're for free markets. A lot of the things that we do align with them. And a lot of the issues that you might care about, whether it's the economy in Missouri, getting rid of the income tax, crime in St. Louis, education rankings, all of these things. The Show Me Institute is a think tank in Missouri dedicated to promoting free markets and individual liberty, and they have letter grades for each school district and each public school out there. They have, some posts about school choice. It's a great, great website, a great organization. We're happy to have it here in St. Louis, and you can use it too at showmeinstitute.org. Cardinals have been kind of fun to track because it seems like every time you do traffic, they score. So I might want you to do a little traffic right now because they were down in this game to the A's 4-3, but they've had quite a top of the ninth, and Jordan Walker just doubled in a couple of runs. It's 5-4 with 2 outs and a couple of folks on base, and it's just this team right now. They have a lot of fight in them. They're fun to watch. I don't know how long it's going to last, but it's really cool for those of us who love baseball. And I really do think, we're going to see an example of this over the course of the next couple of weeks. The fans are going to really reward the Cardinals here at the beginning of summer because they've earned fan support.
They have.
Of course, the Cardinals have great promotions and all that stuff. But, I think it's also fair to remind people that, and I think this is easily something people can forget, that they were, I think, 9 games above 500 last year, at the end of June, and then, things collapsed at that point. So these things do go in the other direction. So, I'm going to bring this up just because I think it's kind of funny. This is one of those topics maybe I would have brought up with Jane on a Friday if she was here. But I look at this because I think we always have this fascination with these Q&A columns going back to Ann Landers and Dear Abby, right? So they have Carolyn Hacks is in the Washington Post, all right? And she's like the modern day ask these questions. And I can't help myself, Sue. I have to click on these things because they grab my attention and they want you to click on them, right?
Well,
so today's headline was, I love this, too, because I love hypocrisy and inconsistency with people who claim to be, so much better than you. I caught my in-laws' vegan partner eating a burger. Give me advice. So this is the letter that Carolyn gets. Dear Carolyn, James is my sister-in-law's partner. They've been together about 5 years. To put it nicely, James is a high horse, moral blowhard with a lot of things, and one is being a vegan. He really has a lot to say about it. I host all the holidays from my husband's side, and each one requires a pregame call with Syl to ensure that James will have acceptable vegan offerings. I make it happen because I love Syl, with sister-in-law's partner. I love Syl. I guess she's saying I love sister-in-law, not necessarily the dude. So she goes, but are you ready? I was downtown for a work meeting, and I went to a bar with colleagues after, and there was James at the bar eating a bacon cheeseburger and fries.
Oh, my gosh.
She goes, I checked the menu, all animals, no plant-based burgers. I asked the bartender, this is awesome. I asked the bartender if he knew the guy that just ate the burger, and he said, James, yeah, he's here every Monday. It's half-off burgers on Mondays.
Oh, my gosh.
Letting
that's
go
hilarious.
that his moral high horse was demoted to a toy pony, and the fact that it raises a lot of questions like, does sister-in-law know? I would really like to stop making vegan meals at all holidays if there's no need to do so. Is there a way to let James know that I know he's 100% not vegan and I'll still be making burgers for the next holiday? By the way, lest you think this is vegan bashing, I'm a vegetarian. I've been plant-based eater in the past. I just did it without the moral lecturing. That's great because remember, this came up last week, didn't it? And I was talking about who was trying to preach about this? Oh, Billie Eilish.
That's right.
Shut the hell up. She's like, you can't love animals and eat animals. Yeah, you can because I do it every night almost. I love my bunny, my cats, my 2 dogs, and then I eat some delicious steak sometimes, and it's delicious. So she's just an idiot when she says stuff like that. But I was reminded of, because I don't really care if you're a vegan or if you're a vegetarian, do your thing, right? But shut up about it and try, get off your moral high horse. Like when Linda McCartney came and Paul McCartney played Busch Stadium back in the 90s, whenever this was, and they wouldn't sell hot dogs. That's just ridiculous. It's just so ridiculous. So I don't care. It's funny. Alexa told me, keep in mind she's 11 years old, all right? She's in 5th grade.
Right.
But they have a fair amount of kids. I think there's like 7 or 8 kids.
Oh, I'm
a
sure.
few that are vegetarian, a few that are vegan. I mean, I think a lot of that is driven by their family, right?
Of course it
Wait
is.
till those kids get a little older and they go to the Culver's night that the school puts on and no one's watching them until the sister-in-law walks in and they eat a big burger. Oh, they're going to love it for the first time. I can't, there are people that are, there was somebody on Survivor recently, and they were, I think it was in this 50th season right now, and they were a vegetarian or a vegan. But you're out there,
listen,
and you're they're starving, right? So they sacrificed their moral high ground to eat meat, even though they don't usually eat meat. Well, I think you got to be a little bit more consistent on that, right?
Well, I get that. I guess I'm of the mind that do whatever you want, but I don't have to do that.
Right. But
and
you
I don't want to
know-
hear about
But
it.
right, you
all
know
the
how
time.
the PETA folks are, and
Yes.
the vegans and all that stuff. But yeah, if you don't want to eat stuff that
Okay.
is made, but also don't is this is where you get into trouble. You start preaching to people, and you're wearing
That's
leather jackets, but
exactly-
then you're
yes.
also wearing leather jackets and stuff
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
I think it's extremely hard and has been for decades in modern society to be really, really strict on the vegan side in particular.
Yes.
But people still seem to want to do it because that means you can't even eat fish, right?
Oh yeah, I think. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Right. Fish. Let me explain to the
Well, you
vegans
can't
listening
have.
out there. Yeah, what can you eat? Nothing. You guys
cheese,
are missing out
you
on
can't
so
have
much.
Cheese you can't have if you're vegan. I don't believe. So they have vegan cheese, which is
Gross.
not great. But I think you can't have dairy. Is
Yeah,
that right?
I think you're right about that.
All
So
right, let me look that up. But yeah.
I think that those of you listening right now, if you are vegetarians or vegans, you have no idea how delicious meat is with a little seasoning.
Oh,
And fish,
don't
it's
do-
just delicious.
torment
Shrimp
these
is
people.
delicious. Lobsters, especially when you take them when they're alive and you
Oh,
dip them
don't
in the
do it.
boiling
Don't
pot.
do it.
Oh my God, that is delicious with a pot of butter. I mean,
no,
I'm all
they can't
for
eat-
animals, but I like to eat animals. And like my dear friend Uncle Ted says, you can't grill it, Sue, until you kill it.
They can't have meat, dairy, eggs, or honey.
Yeah, what a boring existence. You can't even eat eggs?
No.
Really?
'Cause it's a product of a chicken.
Okay, let me take back what I said about having respect for vegetarians and
Oh,
vegans.
come on.
I have respect for vegetarians. Vegans, I don't have any time for you. That's just ridiculous. And, whatever you do. And I guarantee you that 90% of the people who claim they're vegans break the rules on a regular basis.
On the roads, several issues. There is an accident downtown eastbound 44 before Madison. Yeah, they've got all kinds of emergency vehicles on the scene. The two left lanes are blocked. Traffic jams back onto 55 and then back onto 44 past Jefferson. Westbound 40, that's a slow go approaching Kings Highway. And this goes in pockets out through 70. 70 westbound, some moderate volume at Jennings Station Road past the airport and out to the 64 split. Now, northbound 67 is jammed from 94 across the Clark Bridge. This is all due to road work in Alton. We've got 55 in pretty good shape, but on the Illinois side, eastbound 64 is jamming at 255. And northbound 270, an accident south of Manchester in the right lane has created a big jam there. This report brought to you by Overhead Door Company of St. Louis. Call them for their 26-point tune-up. One price up to 3 garage doors and openers. Always look for the genuine original red ribbon. Schedule online, overheaddoorstlewis.com. I'm Sue Thomas with Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Remember how I had some hope that I would get my car back this week because
yeah.
I was rear-ended a few
Yeah.
weeks ago and the shop has had it. And then I get a message yesterday, like as we were sort of wrapping up the show, or it might have been at this time, the Progressive guy is like, because I had heard from the body shop too, and the Progressive guy is like, hey, there's some more I mean, this guy barely bumped me, right? But it was enough damage. But now they have something with my liftgate and my rear hatch that they have to look at.
Oh,
So
that sounds
I was
expensive.
I know, right? I was very hopeful that I would get the car back tomorrow. I hate my rental. I'm just going to tell you right now. It's just not comfortable to be in this car, and I don't like it. And I want my car back. But apparently I have to wait just a little bit longer. We have Fox News coming up here in just a moment. After that, Gorgon Chang, nationally recognized China expert. He's the author of the best-selling book, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. He is coming up next.
Offering help with Iran. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. After meeting with China's President Xi Jinping, President Trump told Fox's Hannity she offered assistance and denied helping Iran with weapons.
He joked. He said, it's sort of if they stopped it, then you stop them. But they'd like to see it opened. But they actually closed it.
China gets a lot of oil from the Strait of Hormuz. Iran closed the strait after the U.S. launched Operation Epic Fury. The U.S. then blockaded Iranian ports. The entire interview airs tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. China's official news agency put out a statement saying Taiwan is the biggest issue between the two countries, and there could be confrontations if it's not handled properly. CIA Director John Ratcliffe has met with his counterparts in Havana. The Cuban government said in a statement that the meeting served as a platform for Cuba to present evidence that the nation poses no threat to U.S. national security. So far, no comment from the State Department. And the U.S. will give Cuba $100 million in humanitarian aid. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence disputes reports that it was raided by the CIA.
A spokeswoman for the DNI's office called the account citing allegations by Florida GOP Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna false. Luna has claimed files on the Kennedy assassination and the CIA experimentation project MKUltra that studied behavior modification were taken. MKUltra is a matter Congresswoman Luna, as chair of the House Oversight Task Force on Declassifying Federal Secrets, said she would like to hold a hearing about. Spokeswoman Olivia Coleman, in her one-line post on X, said the CIA did not raid the DNI's office.
Fox's Gernal Scott, the Supreme Court preserving access to the widely used abortion pill mifepristone at pharmacies or through the mail without a doctor visit while a lawsuit plays out. America's listening to Fox News.
Paid for by government. Did you hear? A secret hoard of 1926 $10 gold Indian coins have been found. These gorgeous 1926 gold coins are as bright and shiny as the day they were struck, and less than 500 of these gold coins are available. Coin experts are calling the secret U.S. gold coin discovery a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When you call, you are guaranteed a 1926 $10 gold Indian coin from the exclusive Anniversary Gold Collection, struck 150 years after America declared its independence. These 1926 dated gold coins are still in uncirculated condition. Call 1-888-201-7071 to secure your exclusive 1926 Special Anniversary Gold Collection $10 Indian coin. Plus, you'll receive a free bonus over a $125 value and free shipping with every order. Call 1-888-201-7071 now to secure your 1926 $10 gold Indian coins before they sell out. Call 1-888-201-7071. Don't wait. Call now.
We are almost at the one-year anniversary of the devastating tornado that tore through St. Louis and, North City and North County and Forest Park. And unfortunately, we're going to bring some of those memories back, but I think in really exceptional ways from some local reporters, including our sister station, KMOX. Sean Malone's going to drop by here. He's actually working on news in the other room right now outside of where we are. But tonight on they are at I got to get used to saying this because they never say AM anymore. They only say FM.
Oh, that's right.
104.1. But they're doing a 2-hour documentary from 8 to 10, which is called The May Tornado 1 Year Later. And Sean will give us a preview of that. Fox 2 is doing one tomorrow that Mandy Murphy really took the lead in putting together. It's at 6:30 tomorrow night. Andy Banker is going to give us a preview in the show tomorrow. I'm very excited to have my old friend Bruce Pearl, Coach Bruce Pearl, who I got to know when I was in Milwaukee. He's gotten out of the coaching ranks, and he's speaking a lot about culture issues. He's coming to the factory in a couple of weeks to do an event for the Jewish Federation of St. Louis, so that's going to be awesome to have him on the show tomorrow. We'll talk some college hoops, but we'll also talk some politics and some culture issues, so that'll be good. Gorgon Chang is my guest right now, nationally recognized China expert. He is the author of the best-selling book, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Good afternoon, Gorgon Chang. Thanks for coming on 97.1 FM Talk in St. Louis. I really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate it, Mark, so thank you.
Well, we're getting, I guess, ready with the time difference to start Friday in China. What do you have as a takeaway from day one? And some of this, because of the time zone difference, is a little hard to kind of get your arms around right now. And these are big, important meetings with two of the biggest leaders on the planet. But before we get into some of the warnings that you're going to share about China, what would you say about the meetings and the summit right now?
Well, so far, Xi Jinping has been very brazen, and he disrespected President Trump. And I've never actually seen something like this. In their remarks Thursday, today, or there yesterday, Xi Jinping referred to the Thucydides trap, which is ancient Greece. It talks about how a declining ruling power will challenge a rising power and perhaps cause a war. And essentially what Xi Jinping was saying to President Trump while he was right there in the same room was, you're the leader of a declining country, a failing state. And so this was something that I hope that President Trump will push back on, because this was just unacceptable.
Well, I thought so, too. We talked about that a little bit earlier with my friend Charles Lipson from the University of Chicago. But was it a moment that, because I haven't seen that moment, I've heard the reporting about it, did it catch the administration Trump off guard? And you would think he's not one to just sit there and take it when someone says something like that to him, right?
No, Trump isn't someone like that. And eventually I'm sure that Trump is one way or another going to get even. We didn't see Trump's reaction because the cameras were on Xi Jinping. But clearly Trump could not have been happy about this.
But he also seems to really like Xi. He relishes in this moment, I think, Gordon. So what are the realistic expectations that come out of this? I guess we can start with economically and then maybe get to militarily with Taiwan. But what would your expectations be as they wrap this thing up?
Most everybody says, and I think that it's right, that they will extend the trade truce, the one that was negotiated between Trump and Xi in Busan, South Korea last October. So that makes some sense because it's really important to Xi Jinping and it's important to Trump. So that probably will occur. There might be some other things that occur or result from this. So we'll just have to see. And, we won't really know for quite some time until we see whether the promises have been carried out.
Do you think there is, let's just talk about the Strait right now, because obviously China is helping Iran. They need the oil, though, that comes through the Strait. You would think that there would be some sort of, certainly discussion about that, but maybe an agreement on that or not?
Well, yes. And the readout from the White House was that Xi Jinping wants to help President Trump open the Strait, and he does not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. But we got to remember that the reason why we have a war in the first place is because China helped Iran develop its nuclear weapons program by transferring materials, equipment, technology, both directly and indirectly. And unfortunately, this has occurred since the Clinton administration, at least, probably before that, going back to maybe the 1970s. But we didn't know about it until maybe the Clinton administration. But no American president has actually called out the Chinese for doing that. And we need to start doing that because China, with its propaganda, has been criticizing the U.S. for the war. Well, we need to say, well, yeah, there is a war, but it's because you made it inevitable, China.
Gorgon Chang is with me. He has a best-selling book out called Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Look, those are pretty strong words, to destroy America. What are you talking about there, Gordon?
Well, in May 2019, People's Daily, which is the most authoritative publication in China, carried a landmark editorial that declared a, quote, people's war on us. We Americans may just sort of dismiss that as propaganda, but people's war has a great resonance for the Communist Party. And in fact, in March of 2023, PLA Daily, which is the main propaganda organ of the Chinese military, actually defined people's war as total war. And yes, China is conducting a total war against the United States, whether we're talking about all of these agents and operatives planting bombs in our country or the biological weapons facilities that we have discovered that would belong to China on American soil, or whether we're just talking fentanyl.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, I mean, just like I know that topic had to come up as well because they're still supplying a lot of those chemicals that, add to this crisis here in this country. Because one of the things that was discussed recently when we were talking about birthright citizenship, and I can't remember what I think it was called something that related to birthright tourism, because you have a lot of Chinese nationals that have come here to this country, born, they have citizenship, they go back to China. This sounds somewhat conspiratorial, but I don't think it is. And then they come back into this country. Is that something you cover in the book?
No, I didn't. This Peter Schweitzer wrote about this. Mostly when Chinese do this, they do it because they want to get out of China. They want to live in a free society. What Peter was talking about, though, is something which is sinister, and that is perhaps the Communist Party, but certainly people producing babies on a mass scale, growing them like we saw in the Matrix movie, and then having them go back to China, become indoctrinated, and then come back into the United States as agents of the Communist Party. So that is a very different thing, and that is something that Peter started to talk about, because we've only had evidence of that for the last couple of years.
You cover, there was a hearing yesterday with Rand Paul's committee in the Senate on Capitol Hill dealing with COVID. You cover COVID-19 and China's role in that in the book, Gordon.
Yes. And what we learned from that hearing was, and we knew this before, but this hearing documented it, that Anthony Fauci purposely covered up his funding of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We've known this for quite some time because there are actually two scientific papers that were published in 2016 and 2017 by researchers at the Wuhan Institute of Virology discussing gain of function research and specifically acknowledging funding from Dr. Fauci's National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Now, on May 11th, the statute of limitations expired for Fauci's perjury before Rand Paul's Senate committee.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, the Justice Department let it pass. This was a clear case of perjury. Now, what Fauci did was he evaded President Obama's 2014 moratorium on the funding of gain-of-function research in the United States. He was absolutely determined to do that research, so he funded it in the Wuhan Institute, which is a Chinese biological weapons lab. Now, that may not have constituted a federal crime, I'm not sure, but perjury certainly did. And the Justice Department should have prosecuted him for perjury because it was a clear case. Now, I actually think that statute of limitations may expire on July 10th because Fauci submitted a statement to the Senate on that, and he reaffirmed his position that he did not fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute. So I think that they probably could get him. And I'm really disappointed at the Justice Department for not even trying.
Yeah, that is disappointing, and I think I was unaware of that. Gordon Chang is here. His book is called Plan Red. Let's get to Taiwan and the realities of this, because, look, I've covered these geopolitical issues. I'm not an expert at all, but we've talked about, the invasion of Taiwan for a long time. We know that militarily the threat is out there. China's being very clear, I think, in its goals. How does the U.S. manage that issue? I know in the book you're talking about maybe a fundamental rethink of our policy, but on Taiwan in particular, how do you handle that topic?
Yeah, I think that the United States needs to drop its policy of strategic ambiguity and move to one of clarity. Our policy right now is to tell neither Beijing nor Taipei what we would do if the use of force looked imminent. And we developed this policy when it looked like both Mao Zedong of Communist China and Chiang Kai-shek of Taiwan we were likely to invade each other. But now, of course, there's no threat of Taiwan invading the mainland, but there is a real threat of Communist China invading Taiwan. And I think we need to be clear. We need to be clear because if we do that, the Chinese won't invade. They'll huff and they'll puff and they'll get enraged, but they won't do anything, I believe, for a number of reasons. And we can actually stop the Chinese from thinking about invading by being very clear about what we would do.
But we don't, Trump kind of likes to cozy up here a little bit. We don't seem as forceful as maybe we should be in that situation.
Correct. As a matter of fact, Biden was better than Trump on Taiwan because Biden on 4 occasions actually said he would defend Taiwan militarily. So that was much clearer. Now, unfortunately, during the Biden administration, his subordinates undermined him by clarifying his remarks and saying that was not U.S. policy. But the point is, the president of the United States makes policy, and Biden did. And what we had was essentially a constitutional coup. Now, Biden was so out of it that he may not have understood what his subordinates were doing. But this was a challenge to presidential authority, the likes of which we have not seen in a very long time.
Well, what is the situation? It's so hard to really kind of tell, and I could say this is true certainly in Ukraine and Israel, across the planet, where you don't really know exactly what's going on because, these situations are complicated. These countries are very, very large as well. But in the situation with China economically, do we have an idea? We're suffering from inflation here. Obviously, we get a lot of products from China. There's the trade issues that are being discussed. What's the economy in China, the effect of normal people, whoever they might be in China, economically right now?
It is very bad. China reported 5.0% gross domestic product growth in the first quarter. It was nowhere near that now. Nobody this side of heaven really knows China's GDP growth number, and it could even have been negative. But we do know that whatever growth there was really factory production for exports, which really doesn't benefit the most people. And the problem here is that Xi Jinping has turned his back on consumption as the primary basis of growth of the Chinese economy. So, for instance, in the U.S., 68, 69, 70% of GDP growth is attributable to consumption. In China, the comparable number is about 38 or 39%. China is the lowest number or among the lowest numbers in the world because he's purposely kept money out of the hands of the Chinese people. So you have a very poor economy. All of it is, or most of it is attributed to the factory sector. And so Chinese people are suffering, which is the reason why the Chinese people, many of them, are gloomy, opting out of society, or trying to leave the country altogether by, for instance, coming across our southern border.
And they have 1.4 billion people in that country. 1.4 billion, which is
that
stunning.
Is the official number. Some people say
it's higher?
Really 1.3 billion.
Oh, a little bit lower? That's still pretty high number, though, right?
It is. And what's really interesting is that by the turn of the century, China will probably have something like 450, 500 million, maybe a little bit more. But they will lose at least half, and they'll probably lose 2/3 of their population when the clock ticks 2100. This will be the fastest decline in demography in history in the absence of war.
So, no, why is that? Clarify that for me. I don't understand.
There's a couple of reasons. One of them is China indoctrinated the Chinese people into having just one child, and they did that from 1979 to 2015.
Yep, that's right.
Plus also, when a society matures and becomes more prosperous, it normally becomes less fertile. And the third reason is because the Chinese people are just gloomy. And so we know that pessimistic societies don't reproduce at the same rate. So China now has a total fertility rate of something like 1.0. In other words, one child per female who's reached childbearing age. You need 2.1 to keep a stable population. So you can see how bad things are in China.
Yeah, that is
total
fascinating.
Fertility number is dropping very fast.
Very interesting. Gordon, this is great stuff. I really love the content and the topic. Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon Chang is the author. I really appreciate you coming on here with me in St. Louis. Thank you so much.
I really appreciate it, Mark. So
All right,
thank you.
Take care.
I'll tell you, we are looking better on the roads, but we've really had some issues this afternoon. 44 downtown is still slow in front of the Arch grounds in both directions. That's due to an earlier accident. We now have an accident northbound 170 just past Olive. Look for heavy traffic back through 64. And westbound 40, slow now, Kings Highway. This is in pockets, but it goes all the way out through the 70 split. On 70 westbound, it's fine out of downtown, then some moderate volume past the airport. But there is an accident reported just before T.R. Hughes, almost right at it, and there's a jam through there. Eastbound, there was an accident near Hanley that's caused a delay. Parking lot on northbound 67 between 94 and just coming off of the Clark Bridge. It's all due to road work in the Alton area. And 44 westbound, there was an accident reported past Kings Highway that's causing delays. We're fine on the Poplar, but there's a slow approach to it on the Missouri side. And eastbound 64 jams headed for 255. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk. This report brought to you by Lakeside Renovation and Design. For over 25 years, they've been St. Louis's trusted choice for transforming homes inside and out. They do everything from windows to bathrooms, and they've given you lifetime warranties and quality craftsmanship. Go to lakesiderd.com. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
The president, of course, overseas in another country. J.D. Vance, the vice president, was in Maine today. I think that's still a state. I'm not sure. We'll check in next. A couple of things media related here. Then we're going to talk about Sean Malone from our sister station, KMOX. They're doing a great special tonight from 8 to 10 on the one-year anniversary of the devastating tornado from May 16th. We have that anniversary on Saturday. Andy Banker from Fox 2 is going to join me tomorrow night because Fox is doing something very similar at 6:30. So last night, I guess the CBS Evening News would be getting ready to start here in a few minutes. And Tony DeCopel, who was I think he's actually in Taiwan. He was not in mainland China, but doing the CBS broadcast. At the end of the broadcast, it was awkward because there was a crew member that literally collapsed while he was reading the news, and this is what it sounded like. If I can get the right buttons pressed.
And finally tonight from Taiwan, as President Trump and China prepare to meet, you will hear a lot about American decline and the rise of a powerful new China. The Chinese certainly, is he okay? We're going to take a quick break. We have a medical emergency here. We're calling a doctor.
Call a doctor, please.
Yeah. So that all happened last night.
So I'm going to sign off for Tony DeCopel, who's been reporting in Taiwan. We're going to go to break. We'll be right back.
Yeah, so I guess the guy is okay. Matt Gutman was the reporter that you kind of heard there. He had to step into the desk and said, I'm signing off. But the photojournalist is okay. They said scary moment. There was a medical emergency, but everything's okay at this point. They didn't give us, a lot of details on what happened, but that's kind of scary. You're in the middle of a newscast, and that happened. So then let's get to this here. I already highlighted a really, really big biased piece of so-called journalism in the LA Times about A.B. Hernandez, who is a boy who is smoking the girls in track and has been for a couple of years. But they just focus in the LA Times on A.B., the boy. They don't talk about any of the girls that have had their dreams ripped away or their awards or their medals torn from them because of a guy with a penis taking, part in track events where he's far more physically able to compete. It's disgusting. But then there's this. I like how the president's very good at calling out reporters. The vice president's pretty good at it too. So this guy in Maine, I think some of this, I got a smart audience here. You guys are going to realize how dumb part of this question was to begin with. And I'm just going to warn you, it's a long question here, okay? But he's in Maine talking about fraud, and of course California and Minnesota come up. He's also there campaigning for someone running for governor, but still, this is what happened.
Phil Hirschkorn from News Center, Maine. So it turns out that Maine does have a Medicare fraud control unit. You mentioned that a few minutes ago. I'm wondering, you said Maine could be the third worst state after states like California and Minnesota, which have proven tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud and many federal convictions. So far, what we've heard about from the federal government in Maine is questionable $45 million in the autism services, which you mentioned. We've also heard about $1.7 million in questionable billing by a Somali.
You can hear the crowd kind of getting impatient here because he's going on and on.
Guys,
what else?
It's all right. Now, I appreciate you all standing up for me, but trust me,
we still have innocent until proven guilty in this country. My question is, what else do you got? What else has your task force flagged that we should be concerned about? Because those amounts are a lot, 46 million, 1.7 million, but they don't really compare to California and Minnesota. What else should we expect from your task force? Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, we have a lot of fraud, but it's not quite the amount of fraud that other states have. This guy is... Look, these reporters are such idiots. I mean, something should jump out at you right away. And I think it does for the vice president. California has 39 million people, if not 50 when you count the illegals, right? Minnesota has 5.8 million people. Maine, barely a state. I'd be willing to give them to Canada. 1.4 million people in the whole state. J.D. Vance.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've got biased reporters in all states. It's okay, trust me. I can handle it. But here's what I'd say. A few things. Number one, you talk about the scale of the fraud being less in Maine than it is in California. Well, California has a population that's much higher than Maine, so that's not necessarily a fair comparison.
40 times higher.
Number two, we've frankly been at this less long than we have in Maine than in other states. Okay, this is something where I would say, you notice a pattern. And you're right, innocent until proven guilty, but what I've noticed is a pattern that when you see types of fraud in certain types of programs, that's the tip of the iceberg. And when I see that autism services fraud in the Medicaid program in the Somali community. But not just that, I see local and state politicians who don't care about policing that fraud. That's the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to find out just how deep that iceberg is. And I suspect, I can't promise, but I suspect we are going to find hundreds of millions of more dollars every single month that we look in the state of Maine, because this is not a state that takes it seriously.
That reporter had no interest in finding out about fraud. All he wanted to do was somehow shame the vice president in a gotcha moment that says, wait a second here, this is nothing compared to California. And the guy's not even smart enough to realize the population difference in his own state, which is just stunning. But that's the state of modern journalism. It's not shocking at all.
We've got real slow goes in the area tonight. Now, one of those, there's an accident reported westbound on 64 on the Illinois side, approaching 157. Parking lot jam behind it. We were already slow eastbound, headed for 157 due to road work. Another parking lot jam, this one northbound 67 between 94 and across the Clark Bridge, all due to road work in Alton. There was an accident on northbound 170, just really close to Olive, and that's caused a delay in pockets, but it goes back through 40. Westbound 40 slow in Kings Highway out through McCausland. Then it's pockets on out through 70. 70 just has some moderate volume past the airport, but then you hit a jam. There is an accident really close to T.R. Hughes that has left us with a jam back to Mid-Rivers Mall Drive. And that's put extra volume on 364. So just bear that in mind. And southbound 270, slow pockets from Olive down through Doherty Ferry. Northbound lines up from Doherty Ferry through Ladue Road. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic. 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Hard to believe, Sue. 1 year on Saturday for the big devastating tornado.
Wow.
And our sister station, we're sitting right next to them right now because we're in our temporary studio. KMOX is doing a big special on that tonight. We'll have details and a little preview coming up. This portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly, heating, air conditioning, electrical, and plumbing. Hey, Saturday marks of course, the 1-year anniversary since the big tornado here in St. Louis. I was off that day on that Friday because I was sick, but there's a couple of things that are happening over the course of the next couple of days. KMOX is doing a special tonight on the tornado, and I know that Fox 2 is doing a documentary tomorrow. Sean Malone from KMOX is with us in the studio to talk a little bit about last year and what happened, his memories, and also about the program that will be on KMOX tonight. Hi, Sean. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
One thing that we should mention from the beginning, you went up that day to the top of our roof here at Park Pacific. You took a picture that went uber viral of the skies being superimposing, didn't you?
Yeah, a video, and it was interesting seeing it go viral because then obviously it got picked up by a lot of people that have more of a meteorologist understanding of what we're looking at.
Right.
And if you look in the background of the video, you can actually see like the electrical transformers exploding. It's these little flashes of lights along, where the ground ends in the video and it turns to sky. And people were pointing out that's how you know it's a tornado. If you see those things blowing up, it's 9 times out of 10, it's a tornado. So that was really interesting to see that type of insight start pouring in, breaking down the video that I just thought I was going up and, okay, there's a severe weather alert for, crossing through North City. It's not in the path of our studio downtown, so I felt safe enough to go up on the roof and shoot some video. And you do have to be a little crazy in the news industry to go to some of the places they're telling you not to go to. But, that was it was quite windy up top there, but it was just a bizarre view to watch. You hear all the time with tornadoes, the sky's going to turn green.
Yeah.
It was truly like a nausea type of
very
green.
ominous. Yeah.
Yes.
So did you ever see the documentary they did on the Springfield tornado that's on Netflix?
The Joplin one I've seen.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
I did. I watched that one shortly afterwards, actually, because I was interested to see okay, how was this covered and how was the aftermath covered and things like that. How did it go out there?
But I bring it up because look, I said in that I watched that before our tornado last year, and I said at the time because I've grown up here in the Midwest my entire life with tornadoes being in the forecast, but you kind of get used to it. You're like, oh, sirens go off. And in that documentary, you saw people kind of not paying attention. What I told people is you'll never react to sirens the same way again. And then you kind of combine it with what happened here. And I think the same thing, it's going to change behavior because we know how quickly it happened. And you got to take, cover if you're in the path of this stuff. And I think that it was unfortunately a good reminder of that last year, but it was a devastating one as well.
Well, you mentioned not being the same. Something people pointed out with that video that I posted was the silence of it. Other than the wind howling around, the tornado sirens were not going off.
Right.
So that became a big story, and they inadvertently sounded just last week, was it, when they inadvertently sounded throughout the city? So
because they were supposed to test, and then there was rain that was coming in that Monday morning, and then they set them off at 1:30. So that was confusing. Doesn't instill confidence that that's been fixed,
but
right?
a lot of people were talking about it going off. It wasn't just, it's whatever. It doesn't mean anything. People were like, wait,
they heard it.
You actually are, like you said, you never hear it the same again.
Yeah, exactly. So what will we hear on the program tonight on KMOX that you guys have put together?
We're going to have quite a lot of different perspectives from politicians involved with the tornado, both all the way up at the federal level, including Senator Josh Hawley, down to the local level. But we're also going to hear from a lot of the people impacted by the tornado. Me personally, I'm going to talk about what I think is one of the biggest tragedies that came out of the tornado was the Centennial Christian Church in Fountain Park, partially collapsed under the weight of the tornado, and one person died in the basement of the church as well. So I'm going to be talking to one of the survivors from the basement of the church, as well as the leader of that church and the kind of the path of recovery that they're going for now. They just began the demolition and removal of the remains of that church just about 3 or 4 weeks ago at this point now. Yeah, so it just finally started getting cleared out. But it was a really tough day for that community. And you think communities, that's what churches are. It's a place where the community can gather. So devastated by this tornado, especially Fountain Park was one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in the city, and their church was demolished, and the site of one of the deaths of a woman by the name of Miss Pat, who was just a beloved member of their community.
And I still am really amazed, and we're so lucky that there were only 5 people killed. I mean, not to minimize those deaths, but this could have been so much worse when you think about the enormity of that twister. I was up, it's been a few months. I should go back. I was up in North City, and I took a look at some of this stuff late last year, and you can see, it probably is based on insurance or what people have, but there are some things that are being rebuilt, but there's a lot of stuff that looks like it's maybe never going to be rebuilt. I know a lot of the Rams money, and the mayor's talking about that right now, but it's just so sad to see those neighborhoods so devastated.
And that's something that it's a hard truth for people to understand, I think, is that the recovery is never going to be as fast as you want. We talked about Joplin earlier. It took a long time for Joplin to fully rebuild and not look like the place that it used to look like on the day after the tornado. Yeah. It's not as quickly as you want all the houses that have been destroyed to be torn down and new homes to be built later. This is no matter how patient you are, it's not going to happen as fast as you want it to. Yeah,
and that's unfortunate for the people. Like, again, some people didn't have insurance, and I don't know what all the answers are for rebuilding, but we obviously were devastated last year with this tornado. I still can't believe the impact on Forest Park, and some of that's going to take a long time to recover as well.
After the
so
tornado
what are your memories of the coverage, actually?
I first went to Forest Park because I heard all the trees in Forest Park were snapped in half, and not quite all, right. But it was
a lot.
It was weird driving around Forest Park, and all these trees are just snapped like they were toothpicks, basically, just broken in half. And went to the Jewel Box there and saw a whole lot of windows smashed out at the Jewel Box. And then that's when I heard about the Centennial Christian Church, how it collapsed. And one of the biggest things I remember from that day was just how the city, especially North City, where the tornado ripped through, turned into a labyrinth, because you're following your GPS to try to get around, and you get to one spot, and it's okay, I can't go up this road anymore, even though it's telling me to, because there's a tree lying in the middle of it.
So I don't know if you heard this story. I believe it was Al Hrabosky. It was a baseball game night, and Al was trying to get to the game, and it took him like 2 hours, if not more, because of exactly what you were talking about. You go down a street, and then you couldn't get back. You try to turn around, and there was a maze that didn't let you get out.
That's what it was, truly a labyrinth. And it got to the point where I was about a little more than a mile away from the church. I got to an intersection where, like I said, go right, and a tree is down, keep going straight. A building is half collapsed on one side of the road. There's live wires, potentially live, at least you don't want to risk it, but on the other half of the road. And that's when I was like, forget it. I'm parking the car and I'm walking to get the rest of the way there, because there is no way I can think of driving closer at this point. And, traffic was congested because there's all these roads that you can't go down. So it was to the point where just driving was a ridiculous thought, thinking you'd be able to get, just a regular station vehicle there. You need something with some serious off-roading capabilities to get across some of the piles of rubble that were on the road.
We need flying cars, dude. We thought we'd have flying cars by now, but we don't have flying cars quite yet.
That's the last thing we need is flying cars. Can you imagine what DUI crashes are going to look like if we have flying cars?
That's a good point, Sean. Sean Malone from KMOX. So the special tonight is 8 to 10, correct?
Correct.
8 to 10 on FM. I got to get used to saying this because back when I was on the station, we only had an AM signal, but it's 104.1 on the FM dial, right?
Yep.
Thank you, Sean.
No problem.
Appreciate it. That's Sean Malone, and I want to mention Andy Banker is going to join us tomorrow night on the show. Fox is doing a documentary at 6:30 tomorrow night. They're going to do coverage throughout the day.
Nice.
But I'm very much looking forward to just seeing that. And tonight, I heard some of the clips this morning. Michael Calhoun's going to anchor the coverage tonight. I heard during one of the newscasts when I was listening this morning, Senator Hawley was chiming in. It was really compelling because he was kind of talking about his memories. He was, to his credit, he was really early in on, getting help and trying to get help, and he's still very critical of FEMA. And, I think he's done a good job at working for some of those folks up there in North City for sure. But I think what you're going to hear tonight is going to be really compelling on KMOX, and then tomorrow night, on Fox, and we'll get Andy's take on that. It's a weird leaderboard at the PGA Championship in
When you say weird,
like the names, I don't know any of the names. Dan Reardon's going to tell us next.
Well, some good news in traffic. They've been clearing some of these accidents, including the one northbound 270 approaching Manchester. So things are actually looking better. So let me highlight what is still jammed. Northbound 67 between 94 and 143. We've got eastbound 270 jammed starting at 367. There was an accident reported east of Bell Fountain. We've got 70 jammed as you head toward T.R. Hughes. Heavy traffic back past Mid-Rivers Mall Drive. There was an accident there in the left lane. They've been working to get to the shoulder. Northbound 170, still slow, headed for Olive. And southbound, moderate volume on 270 from Ladue Road down through Doherty Ferry. Now, the other jam is on the Illinois side. There was an accident eastbound on 64, and that was just past 157. Serious jam behind it, and that's in both directions, partly due to road work. I'm Sue Thomas with Traffic, 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.
Oh, my God. I think I ran out of time to talk about my road opening tomorrow, and I wanted to kick you guys out of the studio. So I'm going to have to do my rant tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. I'm promising you it's going to be a good one. To kind of summarize my point, the city of Valley Park has put me and my neighbors through hell for more than a year. So my plan is to repay that favor, and I've done a Freedom of Information request on every email between the idiots at Valley Park and the contractor, West Contracting, to show how effed up this project was, because it's a great lesson in government bureaucracy and people who don't know what they're doing. So I look forward to, I'm sure the FOIA and the emails that I'm asking for will take 15 months, just like the road project. But yeah, I'm going to try to inflict a little pain of my own and see how that goes. I'm pretty good at it when I give it a try, let me tell you that. Susan L. Ward is someone that you need to know if you need a family attorney, and she's tough, she's honest, she's got experience, and she's got an awesome team. And the new office that they have in De Pere, it's been there for about a year. They're almost at the 1-year anniversary there. And of course, it's not only the end of a marriage in family law. It can be a lot of issues related to other things, even post-divorce issues. And I experienced some of those. I was divorced in the state of Wisconsin, which, by the way, and I think many people know this, the laws from state to state, like the laws in Illinois, different than Missouri when it comes to family laws. Same thing with Wisconsin. So Susan can walk you through all that. Her firm has a great team, and they have a ton of experience, like I said. And some of that experience really just kind of comes out in subtle ways, like knowing the judges and their tendencies. So if you need help in this area, it is a tough area of the law. 314-783-9400, STLFamilyLaw.com, Susan L. Ward. You know, I follow a fair amount of professional golf. I consider myself a fan of the sport. I have no idea some of these names at the top of the leaderboard of the PGA Championship. Dan Reardon, help me out here. What's going on in Philadelphia?
Well, it's been an unusual day. You know, you mentioned the unknown names. Potgieter, from South Africa, a young winner on the PGA Tour, got out early, shot 3 under 67, and since that time, we have not had a single player in the field get as low as 4 under any time during the day. So right now we have 6 players tied for the lead, and they are somewhat anonymous. Joining Potgieter is Stefan Jaeger. Minwoo Lee is really a good player, but he hasn't broken through quite yet. Ryu Hitsusani.
See, you can't even say the names. I don't feel so bad.
And Martin Keimer, who won the PGA Championship at Whistling Straits a long time ago.
Yeah, that was 2004.
And Alex Smalley. They're all in. Now, we have to say that, Scotty Scheffler was a part of this lead, but he 3-putted just the prior hole, and he's back to 2 under. Justin Thomas, a 2-time winner of the PGA Championship, is at 2 under par. And we had some guys earlier who put up 1 under numbers that people will be interested in. Jordan Spieth, Brooks Koepka, they're in, and we have a 2 under for Xander Schauffele. But the preponderance of players on the board are people that you have to. I joked on X. I said, this leaderboard should be sponsored by Google.
Well, listen to this. Okay, here's a couple of things that jump out at me. Bryson DeChambeau, +6. He shot a 76. Max McGreevy, a 76. So there's some big names that probably aren't going to make the cut. But I like a PGA Championship with numbers that don't get super low because everyone, even the +1s, I would say, even if you're plus, you're still in this thing at this point.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the afternoon group is going to face a stern test in the morning because it's supposed to be 47 in the morning, and they're going to play in more than chilly conditions, I think, for this golf course. And I thought the afternoon would be the good round, the good position to be today, but I don't think it's turned out that way. And by the way, Rory McIlroy, after shooting 74, stayed around here for at least 3 hours on the practice range.
Wow.
So the tone must be fine. The game not so good, but he was still here well into the afternoon flight.
What makes this golf course interesting for you for this championship?
What I find this hard to believe this could be true, but in watching play today, the players are really not shooting at the hole. They seem intimidated by the slopes on these greens. And so what we've seen is a clinic on approach putting. We've seen guys putting from 25, 30 feet, sometimes making them, most of the time not making them, and just walking away with 2-putt pars. But the number of shots that people who actually hit close to the hole are very, very limited. And then we also have seen that the rough is not as big a problem in the fairway, but if you miss the green and you're in the rough around the green, you have a hard time saving par.
Yeah, well, that makes sense completely. All right, Dan, well, enjoy. We'll see how these, late, early tee times versus early versus late that we talked about yesterday, kind of work their way out on day 2. And I would expect maybe some more recognizable names at the top of that board by tomorrow afternoon.
I agree with you, Mark. I think they've learned the golf course today, and now we'll see what they do with that lesson.
But I'd love it if we head into the weekend with, a lot of people within reach because that will make it compelling. Look, Scotty won last year by 5 shots, didn't he?
He won by 5 shots. And keep in mind, Scotty had not won a tournament last year until the first week in May. And then he won the Byron Nelson, and then he won the PGA Championship. He's pretty much on schedule.
Dan, we'll talk tomorrow night.
He just missed his first fairway on 17.
Oh, there you go. He's not off the course yet. We'll talk tomorrow in 24 hours. Thank you for the report.
Enjoyed it.
Appreciate. Let's do this.
Stand by. Playback ready.
Now, the audio cut of the day.
The president is in China, as we know, and he is going to, well, he already did. He sat down with Sean Hannity for an interview tonight. He talked about something that is somewhat related to St. Louis.
One thing he agreed to today is going to order 200 jets. That's a big thing, Boeing. 200 big ones. That's a lot of jobs. It's a lot. Boeing wanted 150. He got 200. He said, I think it was a commitment. I mean, sort of like a statement, but I think it was a commitment.
On the topic of Iran, here's what they said. You'll hear this.
China's support of Iran. How big a discussion was that today?
We discussed it. We support. They're not fighting a war with us or anything.
No.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. He said that today. That's a big statement. He said that strongly. But at the same time, he said, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that.
All right. So the president sounds like he thinks things are going pretty well. It's, let's see here, it'll be 7 in the morning, almost 7 in the morning in Beijing right now. They're going to go for day 2. But this is very interesting. We've talked about this before. I mean, she did throw some shade at Trump in a very negative way today. And here's Jackie Heinrich with the readouts from both countries.
Readout indicates that President Trump did not budge on the Taiwan issue, and China really had some thoughts about that. We knew that Xi was going to probably dangle that issue to try to extract something from the U.S. in exchange for cooperation on Iran. The Chinese readout of the meeting warns that Taiwan is the most important issue for U.S.-China relations and, quote, if it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts, putting the entire relationship in great jeopardy. Taiwan independence and cross-strait peace are as irreconcilable as fire and water. The U.S. side must exercise extra caution in handling the Taiwan question. The readout also claims that Xi referenced the Thucydides trap in the bilateral meeting. That refers to how tensions between a rising power and a ruling power have often resulted in war. Now, those are some very sharp words compared with the White House readout, which called the meeting good.
Yeah, so we had a China expert, Gorgon Chang, on earlier. Those are sharp words. And what Gordon said is that the camera was not on Trump at the time. But Trump is not one to take that once he digests that and not really bring that up again today. So that might be something interesting. We're going to talk about it all on a Reardon Roundtable tomorrow. Tim Fitch, Jeff Rainford on the panel, Paul Hall with some entertainment recommendations. Cusimano takes us into a Cardinals weekend at home with the Royals. Andy Banker with a promo or a little bit of a preview of the Fox 2 documentary on the tornado. And my old buddy Bruce Pearl, a former college basketball coach, I knew him in my Milwaukee days. He's kind of making some noise politically and culturally. He'll join us in the 5 o'clock hour.
Crews are still on the scene of the accident northbound 170 south of Page. They've got the right lane closed. We've got eastbound 270 with an accident east of Bell Fountain. That's causing a delay. Still a parking lot jam. Northbound 67 approaching 94 across the Clark Bridge, all due to road work in the Alton area. And other than that, 70 westbound looks good out of downtown. They've cleared the accident, but we're still slow at Mid-Rivers. And we have some moderate volume westbound 40 at Clayton Skaker at 270, and eastbound is slow at the Interbelt. On the Illinois side, eastbound 64 jams at 157, and westbound at 159 due to road work. I'm Sue Thomas with traffic on 97.1 FM Talk, St. Louis Conservative.